Do we have our, oh, there we go, our mics are on. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TriMet's Board of Directors meeting. Before we actually start our business meeting, your testimony to 3 minutes. We have a timer in front of you on that. You'll see it change from green to yellow to red. And at the end of the 3 minutes, if you're, hopefully you'll wrap up. If not, I'll remind you to wrap up as we go on, okay? So with that, I'm going to call up the first two people, Lizzy Myers and Claudia Robertson.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, Ms. Myers.
Good morning. I was unaware that I was first. It caught me off guard. First, I want to say greetings. I'm Lizzy Myers, a vendor at Saturday Market. I'm also the vice chair of the board at Saturday Market. And I wanted to thank TriMet for their thoughtful consideration of keeping the Skidmore Max stop open. It's good, I believe, not only for Old Town, but also for the businesses and the residents and nonprofit organizations there. I'd like to let you guys know that a group has formed to help better maintain and improve the Max Stop. Employees from the following organizations met on July 10th to identify and discuss the current challenges with the Max Stop. TriMet, Saturday Market, the University of Oregon, Mercy Corps, Portland Business Alliance, Downtown's Clean and Safe, Central City Concern, Portland Patrol, and Men's Rescue Mission. The group will meet again in August and strategize ways to improve the overall quality of the station. And we are committed to making the Skidmore Max Stop better. And any way, we can work together on that. We really are ready to join in on that. And we just want to thank you for the participation in the endeavor. That's basically it.
And thank you for getting a group together. I was briefed a little bit on, I guess you had your first meeting. Mm-hmm. And so I look forward to seeing what comes from that group. So thank you very much for your efforts. I appreciate it. Mr. Jump, did you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay,
no.
All right.
Not at this time.
Claudia, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity one more time. As I am a member of CAT, but today I'm here as a private citizen and a longtime advocate for issues that impact seniors and people with disabilities. I was making a list of TriMet's first and unique decisions in their service, but you beat me to it because the foreword of your business plan lists them all here. If you haven't read it, read it. All right. It's a great list. And so our system was designed to serve our city, not anybody else's city. We never asked how far apart your stops are or where they should be. Portland is a hill. You're either going west uphill or you're going east downhill. The slope at Pioneer Courthouse Square is not ADA, but you can grandfather in, and we have, because it's the natural slope of the city. So it really does make a difference if you close those stops. People cannot necessarily make it up, they can't necessarily make it down, and it is the safest stop in downtown. I don't want to wait in the dark on going east at Pioneer Courthouse Square, nor do a lot of seniors. That's why they don't come downtown and go to the movies and go to the theater anymore. I think I said all I want to say. Please reconsider closing those stops. And if you can't say we will keep them open, could you at least give them the year that you've given Kings Hill to count how many people use it and how safe it is, and take a poll of that. I would appreciate it myself, as would a lot of older adults and persons experiencing disability. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I forgot to say was, how many systems do you know that have been written up in Consumer Reports for their friendliness, for their service, and for the service that will be there for all of the people that need it as they get older? July 2017. If you haven't seen it, I've got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have John Hakala and Tristan Isaac. John?
Good morning. My name is John Hakala. I am a physical therapist and a director of rehabilitation services for Providence Health and Services at St. Vincent. Today I'm here to represent Providence Sports Care Center and the potential effects that Ordinance 355 would have on our patients who need our care. The clinic is located at 909 Southwest 18th, directly across the street from the Kings Hill Southwest Salmon Max Station. Our Sports Care Center provides medical services, diagnostic imaging, and rehabilitation services. Our patients come seeking help for a variety of conditions that range from very serious orthopedic conditions, such as broken bones, sprains, and strains, and neurological conditions, including multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's, which make mobility nearly impossible. Strategically, we placed the clinic on there because we felt that the Max Station there would give our patients another opportunity to access our clinic using public transportation. Though our name implies that it's a sports clinic, I want to emphasize that we're a Providence clinic that see anybody that walks through our doors. Our mission is to serve the poor and vulnerable. Our patients range in age from under 10 years old to over greater than 90 years old. Our patient population also represents 25% Medicare, Medicaid, and workers' compensation. Today I come to represent our business interests, but also to represent our patients who would greatly be affected by the closure of the station. The MAX provides public transportation for those who may not be able to drive, bike, or walk to our clinic. The Kings Hill stop allows our patients to stop in front of our clinic and make a short walk that is relatively easily managed 350 feet from our front desk. This greatly eases our patients' way and should not be overlooked in this decision. Closure would result in our patients having to, in order to use public transportation, to navigate more than a quarter-mile round trip from the next closest stop, which is Providence Park. My colleague Sybil Hedrick Park spoke at a hearing on June 26th, and she laid out a scenario, the differences in what our patients would experience between the Kings Hill and Providence Park stations. I'd like to revisit this scenario as I think it is impactful. Please vision that it's you or your family or somebody that you care for that is in this scenario. But imagine you just had ankle reconstruction, you're now weight bearing for 6 weeks, and you're in a boot and in a scooter. Currently, you would be able to get off at the Kings Hill Max stop, cross one set of tracks, and access our clinic 350 feet away. If the stop was closed, you would have to get off at Providence Park. You would have to head west on Morrison, cross 18th, and scoot a total of 0.2 miles to get to our clinic. You're already tired. You arrive for therapy, you do your therapy, and then you have to get back. I'd just like to remind you that the website, TriMet's website, riders want better service and more of it. Better service would be for medical fragile people. More of it would be not eliminating a stop that provides a reasonable and safe distance. I ask that you please consider these in your decision to close that station. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board, President Warner, General Manager. My name is Tristan. I'm here with Bus Riders Unite, and I'm here to talk to you about fare enforcement. A few weeks ago, I got into what you could call sort of philosophical debate over the ethics of fare enforcement with a couple of your fare inspectors. Whether or not it's morally correct to stop people while they're just trying to get to work, harass them, and subject them to an unlawful search. They were of the view that if it's your job, then it's morally right to do it. They were providing for their families, after all. One of them even mentioned that they received a $10 an hour raise to become a fare enforcer. They were previously a bus operator. I'd be very interested to see the numbers on that, but I had reason to doubt this, and other dubious claims this individual made, including that TriMet was a quote-unquote privately owned, publicly funded company. And so I found in many of the discussions that I've had that a pretty solid sort of rhetorical litmus test for our time is to inquire as to one's opinion of caged children. So based on the earlier premise as to if it's your job, then it's the right thing to do, I asked them if it would be morally right to put children in cages, even if it were to come with a $10 an hour raise. I wasn't entirely surprised based on this individual's overall demeanor when he countered with, well, what kind of children? Bearing this in mind, and that we'd have unconfirmed reports of ICE operations at TriMet transit centers, unconfirmed because TriMet won't release the footage and let us know whether or not this is actually happening. We live in a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state, and TriMet has an obligation to protect its riders, all of its riders, even undocumented people. Yeah. TriMet code facilitates ICE operations. It states pretty clearly that any police officer can come onto a transit vehicle or center and demand to see your fare and then follow it up with a variety of questions, asking for your ID, your name, running your record. We're here today honoring operators, I noticed in the agenda for this meeting. And I love operators. We need more of those. We need more service. We need more buses. We need more. We need less fare enforcement and fewer fare inspectors. We need a transit system that is equitable and accessible to all, and that doesn't facilitate federal police harassing our community members. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next two I have are Darla Sturdy and John Wilson. And I believe we have a handout that was given to us.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Good morning, TriMet Board of Directors. My name is John Wilson. I am speaking today on behalf of the TriMet Crash Advisory Committee in regards to SB 1053. I am 34, and at age of 29, I was struck by a TriMet bus while riding my longboard on my way to work at the Clackamas Town Center. I just got off the light rail at the Green Line at the Clackamas Town Center. The Green Line, the last stop for the Green Line. I remember exiting the second car, and I was trying to quickly walk past the crowd of people in front of me. Halfway down the ramp, I cleared the crowd and stepped onto my longboard. While slowly starting to accelerate down the ramp, I noticed a TriMet bus approaching the four-way stop to pull into the garage. On my way to work, little did I know that the bus approaching the four-way stop would not stop and hit me. The strike was swift yet brief. I remember hearing the crunch of glass on my face while my face impacted the windshield. Excuse me. Next was my body sliding on the roadway after hitting the firm pavement. I tried to crawl, thinking to myself, I need to survive for my 6-month newborn old child. Shortly after, I heard a voice ask me if I was okay, and if I knew what happened. My response was, yeah, I felt like I got hit by a bus. And her response was, yep, that's what happened. She told me not to move because I was trying to figure out what bones I had broken. When I saw the blood dripping from my forehead, I dozed off until the paramedics arrived. I was rushed to OHSU to their emergency department. The following morning after the accident, my body was stiff. I could not move a muscle. When I was released from the hospital, I was given a cane to walk with for the next 2 to 3 weeks. I also have a very big scar on my forehead from hitting the windshield. I eventually lost my job due to the fact that I didn't know when I was going to be released. I also had to move in with my older brother and his wife. He had to drive me around because I got a lot of anxiety and I couldn't walk very well. It says, TriMet said it was my fault, but I didn't have to pay any of my medical bills due to the fact that TriMet paid them. So if it was my fault, if I was really at fault, would TriMet have paid all my medical bills? After that, I never heard from TriMet. I felt hopeless. My brother is a praise and worship leader at our church, and I'm a Christian, and God helped me through it. I want to excuse me, sorry. I don't want people to live my life. Thank you for today, and hope that God will help you make sure you are making TriMet a safe transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Darla.
My name is Darla Sturdy, and the booklet in front of you, I hope that you read the six-page speech. It's got everything that's in the booklet that will tell you a 20-year culture. I'm going to tell you real quick some of the things through that. And my son was killed on a crosswalk by light rail out in Gresham, June 23rd, 2003. Last month, it was 16 years. TriMet said within 2 hours after killing my son, it came over the media that he was racing the train, when in fact the police report stated that he was going normal speed, and she said, I thought he would stop. So with that, I started checking out the light rail and took it to the next level, and in 3 years turned around and passed a law in 2007, changing 80 crosswalks, 45 stations. TriMet had provided a list of pedestrians from 1986 to 2006, and that was 505, and that was bicyclists, cars, and pedestrians. To this day, TriMet did not provide that to legislation, and I had asked for it. There was times that Aaron Diaz had given me a report, and on that report he forgot 6 fatalities. Now, if you're someone from TriMet and you're supposed to have the knowledge, why did he forget those 6 fatalities? In this, you will see just different things. Of 1999, they did a study. I did the same study. They hadn't changed it. I had to change it. The law that I brought up and passed here 2 weeks ago was an advisory committee because TriMet judges their own accidents. Now, John is a prime example. You know, they shouldn't judge their own. That should have been something that should have been TriMet's fault at that 4-way stop. Also to, let me just go on here and take a real quick look because so after I passed the law, TriMet said they would put in gates where my son was killed. In 2009, 8 months later, they killed a gentleman at the spot my son was killed. They hadn't changed it yet. Tried to blame Gresham City Hall for permits. Well, Gresham City Hall doesn't give permits to TriMet because they have their own right-of-way. So in all the things that I see is now I passed that law then, and now we see they make these changes after, not before. The reason you pass the law is to make sure it's done before. So what I did was I put together my own bill, and it had stated that TriMet needed to have an outside advisory committee. It took me 3 bills. The third one was changed, and it now shows that the GM will pick the outside TriMet committee, which I hope the board of directors helps him, because the whole purpose of this is to have people see it from the outside. And with that, it comes back to you, the board. And you are now responsible. And it's time that you take a look and start to make these changes. A lady was killed in 2015, or not killed, her leg was severed, her spleen, 2015. It was in the paper, they were gonna give her 15 million. Turns out TriMet has a cap, and with that cap, she gets 682,000. Well, you know why she won? She had a hoodie on, she had earbuds in, because TriMet never finished the law that I passed. 2010, they were supposed to change it, 2014. I've been doing this for 16 years, trying to help other people, because I cannot save my son. And I need your help. I passed the laws, I need you to follow them and make sure, and you're new, please make sure that all the things that was supposed to be said and done in 2007 are done. A law is a law. And now, with this new advisory committee, if you guys talk about safety, it's number one, you're with Vision Zero, you're saying 0 fatalities, then you need to follow that. And you need to say, we are going to do 0 fatalities, we're gonna help our drivers, we're gonna help the pedestrian. So please, I beg you, make sure that you have and you oversee this correctly so that other people do not live my life.
Thank you. Thanks for your efforts, too.
Thank you.
All right. The last two we have are Tina Wazinski and Reverend Dan Hughes, excuse me.
Hi, thank you. As you may remember, for those that you were here last time, I'm Tina Wazinski. I'm the president and founder of the Stadium District Business Association. I'm here again to request that you please ultimately not close the Kings Hill station, but and I know that there's a plan to wait a little bit of time, but I'd really like you to consider waiting longer, because our neighborhood is experiencing a vast amount of growth and development. And in the short amount of time that you guys are planning to close the station, you won't see that development, and you won't see ridership increase if you don't give it the time that we need. There's so much growth and development happening, and there's so much that will happen, and we expect a huge influx of people into the neighborhood, and that will be a huge ridership for TriMet. In addition, this stop, as you heard from the gentleman from Providence, is right across from, right very near the Providence medical facility, as well as right by the Lincoln High School, which is also being redeveloped in the next year. The riders who utilize this stop are not just students. They are elderly, they are visitors that are checking out the rest of the city. There are residents, and there are staff for the many Stadium District businesses. We really want to keep this stop open and at least allow the permanent decision to close it to be delayed until more of the neighborhood and the development has been completed and more residents have moved in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, preach it, Tina. I am also here to advocate for the Kings Hill Max Stop. I am pastor at Zion Lutheran Church, which is right on the corner of Southwest 18th and Salmon. That Max Stop is a huge blessing to us because it allows our members to take the Max to church, different church events, and allows them a very short walk to our campus. And the walk from the Jefferson stop and from the Providence Park stop is significant because some of those who use the Max are in their 70s, and it's a little bit far of a walk for them. So that Kings Hill is a great intermediary spot. And I concur with Tina's thoughts too, that our neighborhood is getting built up. There's significant population growth, and there will continue to be. The parking lot we used to use and utilize from TriMet is now being developed into a huge residential and retail space right across from the church. Lincoln High School is getting redeveloped. I know too that the Multnomah Athletic Club benefits hugely from having the Kings Hill stop there. It allows their members, their club members, easy access to the club instead of the further distances. It also is helpful for evening activities, especially since during at the Providence Park stop, there is significant homeless population there in the evening, and even at the Goose Hollow Jefferson stop, there's kind of been an increase of people hanging around there at night, and so some of my members are a little leery of taking those stops in the evening. So the closure of Kings Hill might impact those members significantly in their participation.
Thank you very much. All right, well, that concludes the public forum this morning. I think before we move on to our regular business item, Mr. General Manager, have any comments? I know we had some good testimony this morning, and maybe you can let us know what's going on in the Safety Committee and as a result of the legislation just passed.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the testimonies this morning. A couple comments I might make from what I heard this morning is, firstly, to the legislation that was passed in Salem. Our organization has already have underway the unpacking of what that means, setting up the structures and things of that nature, and the protocols that will come with that. So there will be more to come, and I will report to the board. The intention is to get this implemented for this fall. So we're on it, and I think we will be successful with this. So looking forward to, and we'll have one of the board members as part of that committee as well. So, this will have to fit in with all the other regulatory oversight that, in fact, that we have, whether it be from the FRA, from Audit, from our external other folks that we use to oversee our organization safety program. So, and we are getting an update from a third party on some of our safety elements right now, particularly on the rail side of the business. So we're trying to hit this from a number of fronts. So the legislation is just part of that. So I'd say stay tuned for that. So thank you. The second item is, and I do want to respond to this, I've heard this a couple times, and to be honest, it's a little concerning around I think one of the individuals talked about ICE. We have no legal relationship, don't even know what the phone numbers are to ICE. We don't have them, we don't work with any concerted efforts. So I've heard this since I was the chief operating officer here a few times. I've heard it, here we are again today. I would ask that we do not pass on these unsolicited rumors. That is not fair. I don't think it's not real, it's not factual. So if you have evidence of it, please bring it forward, because we don't have it on our end. So I really would ask that we don't perpetuate things that are not, frankly, factually correct. So I normally wouldn't take that stand, but this is a heightened time right now, and I think we all need to be part of a community and, that ensures everybody's welcome, and ICE is not. So I just really wanted to respond to that statement here. So I think that's probably the key ones I would comment on this morning.
Okay, great.
And I will have a few other comments later on once I get to the general manager's report.
Thank you. All right, with that then, I'm going to call the regular business meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors for July 24th, 2019 to order. And the first items on our business agenda are our board reports. So the first report is from the Committee on Accessible Transportation, and I believe that is you, Director Baumann.
That's correct. Thank you. Good morning. The most recent CAT business meeting was held last week on July 17th. Relatively short agenda comparatively for that group. First, I gave a report to the committee on the MAX station consolidation plan. During public testimony today, you heard from Claudia Robertson, who described some of the concerns of CAT members about the plan. Next, Greg Skillman gave a report to the committee about potential changes to TriMet's stroller policy, and those changes could affect whether children can remain in strollers while they're on board, and where strollers can be placed on buses. the CAT is going to create an ad hoc committee to further discuss the stroller policy. And next, the committee voted to retain Jan Campbell as chairman for another term. Next, Clay Thompson and Dan Marchand gave a presentation about the upcoming MAX closures that will take place in August in the Lloyd District and later in the fall in Gresham. They described changes to MAX service and the use of shuttle buses during the closure. Finally, Eileen Collins gave a report on lift operations. One thing she discussed was a change in the lift will call policy, and that policy in the past has allowed lift riders to schedule return trips when needed and not at a set time. Because customers in the past have failed to use will call rides as anticipated, that's caused staffing problems for Lyft. And as a consequence, the policy for will call rides has been revised to limit the circumstances in which customers can arrange for a will call pickup. And that's the report.
Some meaty issues. Any comments or questions for Director Bauman? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The next committee report is from this morning's Finance and Audit Committee. Director Stovall.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We covered three key items at the Finance and Audit Committee this morning. The very first one was we got a quick update on transit-oriented development and some of the things that are going to be coming along in regards to how TriMet as an agency and an organization works both with all external stakeholders, internal processes, and opportunities when it comes to transit-oriented development. Some of the work that Director Gonzalez did with that group already has been included in some of that information, but we'll be seeing some information coming to us as a general board in the future. The other, one of the key other items we touched base on was potentially what we're looking at in strategic financial plan. And we're looking at we're evaluating the debt ceiling as we continue to go forward and what needs we have as an agency in regards to capital. And that's going to drive kind of that debt ceiling conversation. And so we'll be seeing some of that coming forward and potentially some board member opportunities to get a deeper look into the financial aspects of just overall how TriMet works and some of the things that we have in place. So the board members will be probably getting some communications here in the near future to spend some additional time kind of looking at that piece as we look to take an edit of some of the strategic financial plans components. And then lastly, we actually had a quick update on Southwest Corridor and some of the things that are going on there and some of the opportunities that exist and the potential of kind of what some of those things look like over the next 60 to 90 days. We will continue to work towards kind of a structural plan to ensure that we're able to move forward on that. And so the Finance and Audit Committee had a quick update in regards to how that's going and how that's flowing. Again, some of these items will be brought to the board, as they get further along in the process. Are there any questions from the board in regards to Finance and Audit?
Excited.
I think you wowed them.
Hearing no questions, I must have done a decent job of bringing you up to speed. Or I must have been vague enough that nobody understood what I was saying.
Well, there were two other members that were on that committee this morning. I think you did a great job of covering it. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm seeing none. All right. Thank you very much, Director Stovall. Let's move on then to the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, impact we call it. Director Way.
Okay, so there were two items of focus for the July 10th MPAC meeting. The first was a resilience program information, and this is really participation of various agencies and stakeholders in the 2040 growth concept refresh. So just as a little bit of background, the resilience program was created by the Metro Council during the last budget cycle to focus on climate change resilience. And this will also coordinate with other departments within Metro and partner organizations that work on mitigating GHG or greenhouse gas reductions, emergency management, disaster preparedness, and response. There are three overarching themes for this 2040 growth concept refresh. I love the concept, which is community resilience, and it centers on mitigating impacts from climate change, natural disasters, and building and maintaining social capital. Additionally, the new refresh theme, Planning for Our Future Economy, provides an opportunity to explore the idea of economic resilience and how we build it. So I believe that our involvement as public transportation for our metro region is highly valuable in this conversation. And the second part of the meeting focused on the emerging technology panel, which our very own Jeff Owen, who is sitting in the audience, he's one of our policy gurus, was able to give a presentation on emergency technology that benefits our Portland region. Some of the updates included a range of topics, including our own updated multimodal planner, ride-hailing, shared mobility services, and as well as how we use municipal broadband networks. And the Metro's emerging technology strategy identified key steps for Metro to take in the next 2 years to guide innovation and supporting our region's goal. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Questions, comments for Director Way?
Yeah, I had a quick question, Director Way. Thank you for the report. I was particularly curious with respect to the 2040 growth plan that Metro is stewarding. What of particular interest are you finding TriMet most engaging with on the pieces of that plan?
I think that's an excellent question. I think because we are such a robust agency, we not only focus on transportation, but a lot of this is also emergency preparedness and safety. So I think we are continuing to have these discussions around how TriMet can play a role not only in providing transportation, but also how we are also a player in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which we know that our newer brand of bus fleets will have that. So continuing to be a part of this discussion. And I know that Mayor Wheeler, in sort of his address to the city a couple of weeks ago, have also said that the transportation sector in particular plays a large role in climate change.
Thank you.
Anything else? No. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And then the final report, board report, is on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, Teac. Director Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Director Warner. We did meet last week as Teac, and we have 4 items that we were able to cover. Teac is a consortium of community partner organizations that help us get feedback from community constituents and help us bring information to community groups about major things that the agency is working on. In this last meeting, we covered safety and security updates. We had Marla Blagg come and visit us from the agency to introduce herself and talk a little bit about some of the upcoming changes with the fare enforcement staffing. We looked at the uniforms of different types of fare enforcement officials so that the community group had a clearer sense for what's the difference between folks that are there for fare enforcement, folks that are there as transit police, and how that will look different and feel different to the community. This is something that the Teac group was very interested in, and so there's going to be some follow-up conversations with some of their community organizations to get that information to community groups so that they have a clearer idea for what the fare enforcement experience will look like in the form of uniforms and the kind of interactions that they would expect. The idea being everyone knows when there is a security risk, where's the best place to go? If there is a fare enforcement concern, where are you going to expect to find that sort of resource for you? So that was one piece of it. We talked a little bit about the formation of a youth subcommittee. There's been a lot of interest within Teac to have a specific focus to get feedback from youth. They have a unique set of issues and more so a unique set of constraints with making the meeting times. So they're looking at a pilot program this summer to get youth involved in a youth subcommittee and seeing how much digital interface as well as physical locations and time and place will suss out whether that can be an effective and well-coordinated group. So that's something that we're piloting this summer into this fall. We gave a Southwest Corridor update, and Community Affairs staff was able to provide an update on the community engagement efforts on the Southwest Corridor. and helped articulate some of the main objectives for the community engagement effort to the Teac committee. That was followed up by an update by the Title VI update staff. Our language access plan is about to be finished up and presented to the board as part of the Title VI update. So the language access plan was able to talk a little bit about their community engagement and to see the contrast between the really high sort of response rate from the language access plan community engagement with how the response rate might have compared to the Southwest Corridor community engagement efforts. So we had a lot of conversation about that. The language access plan enjoyed over 932 surveys completed by non-English speakers within the district, and gave us a really good snapshot for where the critical language access needs are. So you will see that as the board, as that gets presented for our August board meeting. There's not going to be an August meeting for Teac because of scheduling conflicts, but we look forward to the upcoming meeting with updates from the Youth Commission and some of the language access plan updates. Thank you.
No, thank you for the report. Questions? Yes.
First of all, I think the forming of a youth subcommittee under Teac is awesome. So yay for us for really trying to uplift those voices. I just have a question on the participation of that youth subcommittee, since we are, serving Clackamas, Washington, Multnomah County. Just curious as to if some of these youth are coming from the various counties and not just Multnomah County.
Thank you for the question. Yes, they are coming from throughout the region, and it's one of the challenges, frankly, to getting the youth committee to find the time and the place for them to meet. And, hats off to the youth in the committee, because they were very forthright about the need to have opportunities for remote participation, so video conferencing, and trying to find the best tool to promote people to participate from farther regions is one of their primary objectives. So they value people in person, but they know we need to get regional representation. Great. So that is our expectation.
Thank you.
Other questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much, Director Gonzalez. Good report.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the board reports. The next item on our agenda is the General Manager's report. Mr. General Manager, you have a few items here.
Yes, we do. Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So have a number of pieces to cover with you this morning. The first one is a couple of really good pieces of information, exciting news for here at TriMet. So just this week, we were awarded $2.1 million as a grant from the FTA, and we were notified by Senator Wyden's office of this grant for 3 new additional electric buses. So big thanks to all our Congress members and senators who behind the scenes fight and push so hard for not only for the state but for the benefit that you just see here today. So really want to thank them. So exciting news that as we help accelerate getting us to where we know we're going to be in the future. So that will come. I'm not sure the exact timing on that, but we'll keep people apprised. Secondly, I think you've heard from from management before about the need for the red line extension, also double tracking and to the airport PDX, as well as reconfiguring some of the configurations at the gateway area, which ultimately holds us back. The great news is we just received the FDA notification just this week to move it to the project design and development phase. So that is a very important and positive signal, and boy, do we have our work cut out for us. So what a fun problem to have. So this is a $200 million plus project, and it will bring significant benefit to the region as we look to speed the region up. These are exactly some of the steps we're taking in addition to yes to the station consolidation, to speeding MAX up, being more reliable. We're hitting this on many, many fronts. This project itself will also include a number of new train cars, so we get more capacity into the system to get people where they want to go. So a very good signal from the FDA here just this week. Specifically closer inside our own organization, I would like to cover with you the June ridership report. I do want to bring you up to speed on, as one of our next aging part of our system is upgrading at the Lloyd Max Improvement Project that's literally about to unfold in front of us. Do want to bring an update on the Southwest Corridor, so I'll bring up Steve Witter, our Executive Director of Engineering, And finally, do want to acknowledge, yes, it's that time of year again, a bit of a celebration of our Million Mile Club inductees and our Operators of the Year, and I'll explain a bit later. So firstly, let's move to the ridership.
First off, was there any questions of Doug of the items he's already covered? Okay, please.
Okay, thank you. So this year, it's very pleased that this month's report saw a ridership increase for both the Starlight and Grand Floral Parades. I'm having trouble getting that out. The Starlight Parade was up nearly 4%, and the Grand Floral Parade was up over about 6.5% in those using the system. System-wide for the month, we were up in a positive over 2% for the same period compared to last year at this time. That's with more than 1.1 million rides. The weekly bus ridership was also up 2.3%. MAX was up 1.6% as part of that overall aggregate. We have about 2/3 on bus, by the way, ridership, but 1/3 on rail in terms of how many people we move in the region overall. The orange line increased nearly 2.5 percentage points as part of that, as we continue to track the most newest member of the rail network family. And more rides taken on frequent transit, the bus network. The challenge we continue to have is WES. WES was down, decline in ridership 8.6%. So this one continues to be a big, serious problem for the agency that we're doing what we can to minimize cost, optimize ridership where possible. So anyhow, overall, a very good story for the month in question. Again, these are photographs of months, but we look at the aggregate. And over time, you'll start to see as we put out more and more bus service, it takes time for the ridership to be aware and catch up. So I think hopefully we'll see more positive news like that in the future. So also moving next to item 2 is you have in front of you, and I actually was, I took Director Way's pamphlet here, but you have in front of you, and I'll give it back to her in a sec. You have a pamphlet in front of you. Oh, you have one? Okay. Oh, no, I have it too. You'll see a service disruption that we're going to impact our customers on. This is part of maintaining the system so we can continue to use it. It's been active for the last 30 years, and we need to reinvest and make a bunch of changes. So with that change, as in every rapid transit system in the world, you have to sometimes cause disruption to get to the new place of really good service. So again, it's from August 4th, Saturday, to the 17th. The MAX blue, green, and red lines will be disrupted between Rose Quarter and our Lloyd MAX Center stations. There will be fewer trains running on the lines. There will be shuttles running in Lloyd area between Kenton and North Denver Station and the airport. We have done some of those things, and that's worked quite well in the past. We want to continue doing that. We implemented the airport shuttle during the project several years ago to help our visitors there, so we want to keep leveraging that as much as possible. For us, it's very much an all-hands-on-deck approach. These are complex. We don't take these things lightly. We'd rather not disrupt if we don't have to, but with buses, you have more flexibility where they can go. With trains, you're only as good as the train in front of you. And so trains carry per unit far more volume. The buses can't fully capture the same amount that a train does. So we will have an extensive amount of bus bridging going on to help compensate this. And I think as the agency has demonstrated, whether it be First Avenue, other developments we've done in the past, you'll see, as I said, all hands on deck, but I think we actually do a pretty good job now mitigating the disruption. So for our customers, for those listening at home, I'd say know before you go. Plan on extra travel time for these type of events, and I'm really confident our team has done a great, robust job in the complex planning and bringing our other municipal and other key partners into this as well to minimize the disruption for any and all. So this is a large event coming your way. Next up, Southwest Corridor. So maybe I'd like to call up Steve Witter and Leah Robbins, who are deep into the weeds on a really extensive project for us, to give everybody an update. This is an important time. We've been moving through a natural process, but the next few months are going to be really crucial here as we position this, knowing that the 2020, this has to feed in, should a Metro 2020 ballot proceed. It's important for us to determine the degree that we have the financial package and the services that go with the Southwest Corridor to feed into that ballot. So you're going to see a real time box on this thing by the end of October. We've, across the steering committee, can we put an agreement in place? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to both Steve and to Leah.
Thank you, General Manager. Board President, members of the board, thank you for having me. Before we get to Southwest Corridor, I just want to say we are very excited about the track renewal program at Lloyd Center. It is all hands on decks, and so I wanted to offer that we do have ride guide positions we're trying to fill, so if the board members wanted to come do ride guide with me, that would be great. A little bit off script there. So the Southwest Corridor...
Do we get the nice yellow vest and stuff?
Oh, we'll get you a vest and a shirt. Oh, yeah.
All right, good.
Hats.
All right.
Hats.
Just no driving buses.
Okay, okay.
So thank you for having us for the Southwest Corridor project update. We've had a lot of kind of activity out in the community last week and this week with Citizens Advisory Committee meetings and our steering committee meeting, and so it's just perfect timing that the board meeting was happening this week and we could share the same information with you, so you're following along with the project. So let's see if I can work the clicker. There we go. So I know it's no surprise to the board members as they have been tracking the project, but it's a 12-mile alignment into the Southwest Corridor, sort of the last of the spokes and wheel. It'll be 12 miles into Tualatin, touching at the Barber Transit Center, downtown Tigard, the city of Durham, and ultimately at the Bridgeport Town Center there. It's a 30-minute ride, and we like to say it's congestion-free, and so it will be rapid transit, as we've always talked about. Of course, these projects don't happen without funding, and so here is sort of a funding picture for our funding plan. The largest slice of the pie is the federal New Starts program. At just under 50%. That's been our traditional match for the last couple of projects, 50-50. You'll notice that the next largest slice of the pie is a regional funding measure, which we will be going out to the voters in 2020. I know that Director Simmons is part of that planning process, and that's a Metro-led funding measure. I did want to also note that the combination of the federal funding and the regional funding makes up about 83% of the funding, and then the rest is on the shoulders of the agencies that will operate and benefit from this. And so you see that Metro, City of Portland, TriMet, Washington County, and the state of Oregon all have contribution levels that we are hoping to secure in about the next year or so. And then I did want to note, you've got kind of a project total there, but as we continue the conversation, we'll talk about project scope. And so we've taken the finance cost out of that project scope conversation. So as I turn the next page, that'll become more, next pages, that'll become more relevant. Here's a timeline of the project, and of course we're mid-year 2019, so we are just at the back end of the federal permitting process, which is the purple magenta bar environmental review. That will conclude. We are planning with a submission at the end of this year, beginning of next, for a final environmental impact statement, and that's really where the whole project is described, the impacts, the costs, the benefits. Below that, we sort of have the kind of the timeline to put together the funding picture. And so I wanted to note that the $60 million has already been committed by Metro, and that's the funding that we're using to get through our current phases. The $375 million, that's essentially the local shares that I just described a moment ago, the 17%. We're aiming to get intergovernmental agreements inked, certainly by this time next year, so that we can make our application for engineering, and having those commitments in writing is a key to getting through the next phase, which is the engineering phase of the project. And then you also see the $850 million. That's the regional funding measure that I spoke of that's run by Metro. And then the last piece of the funding that comes in is always the federal funding. And so a key to them making that commitment is that we've committed as a local entity in a region to say that we're in. So that's how the funding plays out. We're hoping to have secured that by fall of 22, and then service begins in 27. So it's a timeline. It's a very significant project. So cost is always king. So I mentioned our project scope target at 2.375. We had an estimate earlier last year during the locally preferred alternative, and we saw that project jump. During the locally preferred alternative, each jurisdiction takes that as an opportunity to include additional scope elements. And so we could see some scope pressures listed there that have come about as part of that. Barber Boulevard is an aging sort of an orphaned highway is what we call it. It was obviously replaced by Interstate 5. So lots of those structures, lots of those stormwater facilities, lots of that infrastructure is really not up to current standards. And as we went through the LPA, folks wanted to make sure those scope elements were addressed. Additionally, the project is 13 miles long, and there's almost every property has an impact one way or another as we increase the width of the right-of-way to include the light rail project. So currently we have an FEIS estimate in progress. We have gotten a draft. Our team is working through that to make sure it's sort of, got a quality control, quality assurance pass at it. That's coming in at $2.84 billion. That's where you get the $462 million gap. It's a very large number that we're working with our jurisdictional partners to address. We really feel like there are some scope elements that need to be reconsidered, reaffirmed, but the goal of the project is to get to the Bridgeport Town Center into Tualatin, and that was affirmed by our steering committee again this Tuesday. So our work is definitely cut out for us. We have set up a very intensive work session, a series of work sessions with our project partners to identify the necessary scope elements that that need to be addressed in the project. And it's all good scope. It's just a question of whether this project is the right vehicle to address that. In many projects, we've seen other elements added to projects as betterments, so funded outside of the federal funding, and that's certainly a mechanism that I think we're going to see in this project as folks work to really update the infrastructure in this sort of aging corridor. So I've spoken a lot. Here are just sort of our next steps. Align project and scope, as I just mentioned. The local funding commitments, those IGAs that are so critical to us moving forward, that begins at the very first of the year once we get the scope sort of settled down. And then we'll continue with refining the funding commitments and our FTA applications as we head into the regional funding measure that is scheduled for next November. So happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Complex issue. And
I wanted to hear from Lee, idiot.
Well, Steve did a great job. I'm here for any other questions that you want to dive deeper into, or any other points.
I have a question. About the viaduct, and if we weren't doing the Southwest Corridor and the viaducts needed to be replaced, what jurisdiction would be responsible for that?
Well, the current jurisdiction of the roadway would be responsible for any upgrades or replacements. So right now, the current jurisdiction of Barber Boulevard is ODOT.
So are we seeking funding for the viaducts from ODOT?
We could toss a coin.
Yeah.
So as part of ODOT's jurisdiction, so ODOT will take their jurisdiction and transfer it to the city of Portland, and there's numerous reasons for doing that. ODOT has already pledged an additional $65 million outside of the project to address the viaducts issue. I think as we all know how these projects go, whether it's a remodel on your house or a brand new light rail line, more is known as time moves on. And as we've looked at what it takes to actually replace that infrastructure, and if anybody's driven through it, I mean, it's you either close down Barbara Boulevard for a number of years or you work around it in phases, which makes it pretty expensive. It's got about a $200 million price tag.
Oh.
So the amount of additional funds that ODOT is bringing is not matching with the needs. We are working with our congressional delegation to look for, are there ways to fund this outside of the project?
Right.
So I think.
Because that could be a really big gap reduction.
Yes.
piece.
And Leah's team has looked at different ways to avoid that cost if that's what we have to do.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff?
I do have a question. Can you talk a little bit about the connection to the OHSU campus?
Sure. So there has been a process to identify what type of mechanical connection would go up to the hill. The inclusion of a connection is very important for the metrics of the project because the ridership at that station is the highest ridership, and it relies on a faster connection up the hill. So our budget asserts a certain level right now, $15 million, which is based on a bridge and elevator. But our team is also has been directed from the steering committee to look at both a bridge and elevator or a funicular. So our technical team is still developing that funicular option, that inclined elevator. Both of those alternatives will be defined in the FEIS, but the funding of that is part of the broader conversation of the project. So there will still be more discussion to be had about which type we'll include in the final scoping of the project. There will be opportunities to talk about other funding mechanisms for that too.
Are there accessibility issues with the funicular? I'm picturing the ones I've seen in Europe where you have to go upstairs to access.
They both, the baseline assumption is they both have to meet our accessibility requirements and our intent to make it a universal design. A funicular is basically an elevator that traverses both horizontally and vertically. So, and both alternatives would also include stairs. So they will both meet the same standards for accessibility.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Just to add, we have taken that to our citizens for accessible transportation, and they've both said the inclined elevator or funicular or the bridge and elevator would meet their needs. They made other comments on different modes, which was certainly taken into consideration when the green ribbon panel was in action.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Just question.
Please, I'm sorry.
I'm just sort of curious as to how we've been talking about TOD, transit-oriented development, and just trying to see how that process, how that development, perhaps that acquisition of land for things like more affordable housing units to be built, how does that layer into this planning that we are in currently?
Sure, terrific question. Not sure how many of the board members are aware there's a parallel process happening through Metro, funded by the Federal Transit Administration, for studying equitable development principles in this corridor. And so they're looking at, and I think probably, you know, if there was to be a more than 50% focus, I think probably 75% focus is on affordable housing. And that corridor right now has a really great mix of kind of naturally occurring affordable housing. So through that Metro program, they're putting together some strategies that can be put into place about how we address those questions. TriMet sort of resulting from that, has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Portland Housing Bureau and also the housing bureaus in Washington County to make excess properties available to them as part of their desire to expand affordable housing. So that's very consistent with our transit-oriented development track record, where we've made properties available at less than market rates to those organizations that provide more affordable housing choices for people. So I hope that addresses your question.
It does, thank you. And I wanted to bring that up because the housing crisis is still a crisis statewide, not just in the Portland area region. And I just know that sometimes when major light rails or bus lines are altered significantly, that does impact the communities that live in those areas, and sometimes the property values do increase, which oftentimes displaces people. So just wanted to understand what TriMet's role, what our role is in working in collaboration with housing and business and other stakeholders to minimize that.
If I could add to my comments, this effort by Metro, TriMet's on that steering committee, along with a lot of other organizations. It's the first time we've done this in advance of a major infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. So it's plowing new ground and learning lessons. So it's
great.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, I have one more question having to do with funding, and the slide that you gave that showed the funding mechanisms.
Yes.
And are those locked in stone? I mean, as we look that there is a gap, is the steering committee considering that there's some flexibility in terms of some of the local funding from the different counties and things increasing, as opposed to being at the $75 million level? I mean, to what extent, how locked are we in terms of where the dollars are coming from and whether there can be increases from some of the various parties?
Sure, I would say nothing is locked in.
Okay.
But at the same time, these funding levels from the local jurisdictions are a bit of a push.
Okay.
As one of my colleagues have said, it's sort of a Spinal Tap reference. All the dials are being turned to 11 here. So, but I will say that the steering committee conversation on Monday was all about looking for additional revenue to bring to the project. And so I think we'll be looking at all the project partners for that. But I just know in conversations with Washington County and City of Portland, 75 is a big lift.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I had a follow-up question with regards to the Metro effort that you mentioned, Steve. I'm glad to hear that TriMet's on the steering committee. I was just curious, is that you or someone from your department, or at what level are we participating?
I attend the steering committee meetings, and then I have others that attend the technical advisories.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Good report. Good report. Thank you very much. I would just add that having been around other light rail projects, this is a lift. I have great confidence in the staff and the local jurisdictions and everybody to work together to figure out a solution to this, because I think it's a project everybody wants. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be a big lift, but I do have a lot of faith that we'll get there in the end. So thanks for what you guys are doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Just to continue on, next, I'd like to talk about some of our frontline employees. This is actually, for me, one of the really important things we do in this agency. I think, as some of you know, we have over approximately 1,600 bus and rail operators who really are frontline, in many cases, are frontline touch points every day, and they can make or break the experience for our customers. And when you look at it combined, we carry about just under 100 million, 97 million rides a year. And each one of these is your first impressions is lasting. And today we want to bring up our key successful operators. We have many out there, but this is, in French they say le meilleur de meilleur, it's the best of the best. They have a complex job. not only managing the customer interface, managing safety, managing a complex set of machinery, whether it be a bus or a train. But we really do want to acknowledge our finest here today. And the first group I'd like to talk about is the 2019, our Operators of the Year. And also the second group would also be our newest class of what we'll call the Million Mile Club inductees. Now, the Million Mile Club inductees is actually an award that's actually supported by the National Safety Council. So this is a federal acknowledgement level. And so what's the qualifications? Well, firstly, if you drive a bus or operate a light rail vehicle for 1 million miles, think of this in your own personal vehicle, should you have one, without a single preventable dent, scrape, nick, or accident. Impressive. Truly impressive. Wow. That's the equivalent of driving around the circumference of the earth 40 times without any one of those things happening. I struggle in a parking lot sometimes, let alone what these professionals do. This year, the Million Mile Club inductees, our lead light rail operator, Mr. Mark Bailey, and I'm going to ask these individuals to come up here shortly. Our Gold Grand Master bus operator, Mr. Paul Tyler, and our third operator was inducted, but they've actually asked not to be recognized. That's how humble they are. But I really do want to congratulate all of them, and I would just ask if Mr. Bailey, Mr. Tyler could come up here, and I would like to put forward to the board, if you would consider such, actually passing a resolution for each of them, acknowledging and honoring each winner for their achievement here this morning. So, Mr. President, if you're comfortable doing that, I will turn that over to you.
I am, and we do not have a resolution in our packet for these three, though, right? So this is we will pass a resolution yet to be drafted.
Correct.
All right. So I guess I would entertain a motion to both write and approve 3 resolutions. Is that what it is? 3 for our Million Mile Safety Award winners.
Correct.
For this year.
Million Mile Club inductees.
So moved. Second.
Motion.
Second.
Oh, there's resolutions for for these 3, I think.
But they're in your packet.
Oh, they're in the packet?
Yeah.
Well, then I'm.
Where they at? Those are different.
I think they're different ones.
Those are different.
Yeah, these are different ones. I think we had it right the first time. So
Million Mile Club is the resolutions to come.
Yes.
Your Operators of the Year are actually in your package.
You're right,
Yes.
exactly right. So I heard a motion to create and approve those 3 resolutions. Is there a second?
Yes.
I had a second. Is there any further discussion on this resolution, these resolutions?
I'd just say it's an impressive. It's an impression. I can't even speak. I'm so impressed. It's an impressive accomplishment. I actually, as many of you know, I actually hold a CDL. I just had my physical yesterday and I passed. You know, I could tell my mother I finally passed the test. And you know, I used to drive a bus way back in the day, and it's a challenge. I mean, it absolutely is a challenge as you're interacting with all the vehicles around the city. And so to think about doing 1 million miles without a preventable accident is a tremendous accomplishment. It shows the focus and dedication, you know, to this agency and to the stakeholders and to the people that ride every day, and then the folks that are actually interacting with all of our vehicles. So, you know, for the operators, thank you for your commitment, your dedication to operating the bus and the way you do. And to all the operators, I mean, it's a tough task out there in all types of weather and all types of conditions. And every single day you go out there and do a phenomenal job. So huge thanks for everything you do. And one of these days I hope to get in the bus rodeo. If anybody's listening, I got some skills.
We'll work on one thing at a time.
Yeah, really.
Any other comments? I think everybody here seconds those comments. And, it is an amazing feat. So all those in favor of that, I'm going to say all those in favor of the motion to approve these resolutions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. Now, would you like to call them up, please?
I think what I'll do is I'll like to do with the Operators of the Year. We'll call up all of them.
All right, perfect. Perfect. All right.
So as I've indicated, now I'd like to recognize our Operators of the Year. And again, you have resolutions before you specifically for those. I would like to invite up Neil Beaudry, Cynthia McLean, and Alice Greendell to come up and please have a seat specifically. And we're probably need another seat here, a chair if we could.
Awesome.
Beautiful. So Neil has been with TriMet since 2011. He's earned 7 Superior Performance Awards and is a senior operator with 9 National Safety Council Awards. Neil came to work at TriMet because he wanted to work with people. And his favorite riders are those who have persevered beyond some type of adversity in their lives. Neil, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do every day. And congratulations on your 2019 Rail Operator of the Year. So,
Thank you.
next, I'd like to acknowledge our mini-run or part-time bus operator of the year, Cynthia McLean. Cynthia has been with TriMet for 19 years. She has 8 Superior Performance Awards and 14 National Safety Council Awards. She is a senior operator and has 7 years of perfect attendance.
Wow.
She also says she greets every rider with a warm smile and a kind hello. I can verify this because I have actually interacted with her, and I actually have friends who actually ride the lines that she's involved with, and yes, that is true. It is consistent. Cynthia, thank you so much, and congratulations on being Mini-Run Operator of the Year. Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to recognize TriMet's Bus Operator of the Year. Alice Greendell has been with TriMet since 2007 and recently achieved the Master Operator status, and a designation that recognizes truly superior performance in the organization. She has 10 Superior Performance Awards and 8 National Safety Council Awards. This is one impressive group and one impressive person. She lives and breathes customer service, and it's a big part of why she loves her job at TriMet, and the results show. Alice, congratulations on becoming TriMet's Bus Operator of the Year.
Thank you.
I think, as you can see, this does demonstrate all the exceptional, not just what we think, but what others think about the experience that these people and these talented team put on every single day. I want to thank each of you, and I'd ask if you would please join us up here. I'd like to get a picture, if we can, with a photographer around somewhere?
Right behind you.
Okay. Always know who's behind your back. No, so maybe I'd like to ask the board if they would fully come up, and we'll have the operators come up, and we'd like to get a picture with the board and all of you. So congratulations to all of you.
Congratulations.
No, this is. Good? All right. Thank you. Congratulations.
So before we conclude this, I believe there are 3 resolutions that you have in your packet.
Correct.
The resolution 19-0748, 49 and 50, which are recognizing and commending the mini-run operator of the year, the rail operator of the year, and the bus operator of the year. Is there a motion to accept those 3 resolutions?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
In the last whereas in the resolutions for Alice and Cynthia, there's a gender reference that is incorrect, and that needs to be corrected.
Thank you for that. Can that friendly motion change there? All right.
Yes.
All right. With that amendment, is there any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the 3 resolutions with the edits, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, all 3 of you, and for what work you do and for being here today.
Mr. Board President, that would conclude my reports for today.
All right. Well, let's move on then to the consent agenda. Items appearing on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. However, any board member may remove an item from the consent portion of the agenda for discussion or questions by requesting such action prior to the consideration of this portion of the agenda. And for those of you watching on TV or here in the audience, there's 3 items on our agenda, consent agenda today. First is approval of the board meeting minutes from June 26, 2019. A resolution directing the reading of all ordinances be by title only. And then a resolution 19-07-51, which is modifying funding allocations previously approved in resolution 19-02-08 for the 19 and 21 biennium special transportation fund, I think as a result of changes in the federal requirements or limitations. So is there any item of those 3 on the consent agenda that any board member would like to have removed for further discussion or consideration? Seeing none, then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion on, I'll let you pick who was second. It was Keith, okay, very good. Any further discussion? All right then, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion is approved unanimously. All right. Let's move on then to our normal resolutions. The first resolution is resolution 19-07-52, which is a statement of responsibilities and code of conduct for the board of directors. And I think this is under my name, so I'll take this very quickly. If you remember right, the board discussed this at our last meeting, and I think we felt it was all good, but there was concerns and questions about attendance, and we wanted to see if there was a way to temper the language, I think, under, I think it was A2, which talked about as where it said attend all board meetings. And I think some people wanted to maybe see some less advanced notice. You could be excused. And I think we said, let's give it to staff, see if we can come up with some language that would affect that. And I also think Director Bauman rightfully said there's some state law that we need to be aware of in terms of our appointments. And so I believe I sent you a memo and a red line version of this, which instead of tempering it some, I think we made it even more restrictive. We included the word serious in terms of illness, which is right out of the statutes. So that was one area where I think after we looked at it again, we decided we really needed to stick with what the statute said. And essentially says we will attend to board meetings unless it's an emergency or serious illness. And if unable to attend, we'll make every effort to attend telephonically. And I think, and the law does have requirements in it. If you miss a couple meetings, you're automatically suspended from the board. And that we wanted to make that not an issue for us as a board. And then the second item, there was a lot of discussion about. I think it was under ethics, under C3, where, C3, where essentially we wanted to make it clear that the board really has the hiring decision of the general manager, and we may be asked to advise in a hiring panel, but again, that wasn't really our responsibility, and we just sit there in an advisory role. So those 2 changes, the one in the attendance and this were changed to reflect the board's comments, and I think it's ready to move forward to adoption. And I would encourage you and urge you to approve it as submitted here this morning, unless we have further discussion and questions that would allow us not to move forward. So I'll stand for questions, and staff can stand for questions too on this one. Yes.
Not so much a question, just really a statement of appreciation for going back into the state policies, making sure we're aligned with the state ordinances, and bringing that alignment into this document, as well as clarifying the comment made around the role we have with regards to selection committees for staffing decisions. I think there's a lot of greater clarity in this document now. I appreciate the work, Director Warner.
Other comment? Yes.
So I am generally in supportive of this. I do want to sort of just call our attention to number 3. Under general expectations, under the Statement of Individual Board Members' Responsibilities and Code of Conduct. So number 3 says, build goodwill for TriMet by attending charitable and community-based events as a TriMet ambassador, being mindful that as a board member, I represent TriMet publicly and shall speak to promote a positive image and support the interests of TriMet whenever appropriate. I think that's a great statement. I think we all strive to be that ambassador for TriMet. But I also think that part of our responsibility as a board is also to be a goodwill ambassador to the communities that are outside of our agency, and to, be a bridge builder, be a connector between those communities and our agency. So while we may not want to wordsmith it now, I just want to say that publicly, that I know that that is in all of our best interest to do that.
Yeah. I think everybody here is nodding their head along with that. We agree with you. And I think in our conversations we've had that you'd like to figure out how we can all help be a better ambassador for TriMet. So I'm hoping staff can continue and remind us when there's opportunities for us to be out there and interact with the community. And it goes both ways, is what you're saying, Director Way, and
right.
we're with you on that.
Thank you.
Other discussions? Well, then, is a board member ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 19-07-52?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those then in favor of the motion to approve this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next resolution, which is Resolution 19-07-53, which is authorizing a modification to a contract with Stellar J Corporation for the Ruby Junction Shop Modifications Projects. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Board President, members of the board. So the purpose of the resolution is to request this modification, a large project for us. It's our oldest Ruby Junction, that is our largest and oldest rail yard. It does require an expansion and a renovation to continue to maintain the fleet of our light rail vehicles, even despite some are being midlife rebuilds or contracted out. Among the items needed are specialized lifts so that we can perform the work underneath the vehicles. In November of last year, the lift manufacturer that Stellar J had intended to use for the project went bankrupt and ceased operations. As a result, Stellar J had to find a new LRV lift manufacturer. This is a uniquely specialized field in North America, and there are very few domestic manufacturers able to provide this service. Stellar J identified Whitting Corporation out of Vancouver, Washington as the best and most reliable and convenient manufacturer, and entered into a contract to provide those lifts. The resolution before you would increase the change order amount for the contract with Stellar J by $350,000. This is specifically to account for the cost increase for Whitting's LRV lifts. Stellar J utilizes their DBE contracts for about 6% of the work. This was a low bid contract, so TriMet has limited input on the contractors involved. We will continue to work with Stellar J to find any opportunities we can to engage with these certified firms. The project is funded with a grant from the FDA under the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project. The change order here increase would be included in our fiscal year 20 capital program budget. Your recommendation is requested, and we have our experts here if you have any technical questions on this.
I see some questions. Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. Yeah, a point of curiosity here. I know that Macton Corporation has ceased operations now, but was Macton Corporation located regionally as well? I see that the new purveyor is in Vancouver, Washington.
Macton was out of Connecticut. This is a mistake here. It's not Vancouver, Washington. They're out of Chicago. Whiting is. They have a local service maintenance department in Vancouver, which is another plus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none. Is the board comfortable with offering a motion then to approve Resolution 19-07-53?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Yes, we have a question down
Yes,
here.
I have a question.
Please.
Was any other contractor considered along with Whiting?
As Doug was saying, there's very few domestic suppliers. There's some brokers that get equipment from Europe, but it wouldn't satisfy the Buy America Act, as this is a federal contract. So really, Whiting makes a really solid piece of equipment, and they're the one that our rail equipment maintenance users want, so it's a good fit.
So we were limited in our expansion, or who we were looking for. We were limited in trying to find someone else to replace.
Yeah, a couple of the other potential suppliers dropped out of the business, so Whiting is one of the last domestic suppliers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunate, but hopefully we've got the right one that can deliver. Yes. Do you have another question?
Yes, thank you. Good catch. I was thinking about asking it while you called me on it. Did you actually receive other formal bids from other bidders in this one?
We did, but again, they didn't satisfy the Buy America Act, and Whiting had a robust backing from our LTK design engineer, and again, it's what our users want. So, yeah,
Thank you.
Limited options at this point.
Thank you.
I'll go just to kind of close the loop from the last time this came before us. So when Macton went bankrupt, had we made payments to them, and has that been recouped in the bankruptcy proceeding?
We had made some payments to them for materials that were supposedly on hand. I think they were on hand when we made the payments. When we sent an inspector as part of the, and I'm not, a bankruptcy, I'm not a lawyer.
I am.
I know.
Thus the question.
When our inspection team went out there to look for those materials on hand, there were numerous, I think, interested parties, and those materials were nowhere to be found. So we are certainly seeking legal remedy to cure for these additional costs.
We are planning on with taking back that money. The next invoice, it's around $600,000 that we're going to recoup. The Stella J is still performing work. We have got the 4 overhead cranes installed, so the next invoice is going to be around $700K. So we'll take the $600 that we overpaid for the Macton back, and I've been working with Greg on that.
So it sounds like Stellar J is bearing the risk.
They've put in an insurance claim, so they're proceeding with that.
Okay, thank you.
So I think just for clarity, so there's sort of two paths here. What's going on behind the scenes to recoup our interest? What you have before you is to allow us to proceed because we can't wait. We have sort of a live railway that we're trying to support, and so this is that front end piece. The back end piece, claims and such, will work its way through. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve Resolution 19-07-53. Any further discussions? Seeing none, then all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-07-53 signify by saying aye. Aye. Oh, those opposed? Those abstaining? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, let's move on then to the next resolution, which is Resolution 19-07-54, which is authorizing a contract with Bridge Data Solutions, Inc. for hardware, software, and related services. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'm just going to call up Tim McHugh, if I could, to answer any technical questions on this one. In March of 2017, the board authorized a contract with Bridge Data to provide some goods and services related to our broader IT needs. Since then, our TriMet experienced 3 unanticipated events that nearly exhausted that contract amount. The events specifically were an update and redesign of our IT network due to an incredibly impactful agency-wide IT outage, and some of the board members were not on the board at the time, where our control room basically was shut down for almost 2 days. So part of that recovery from that event alone cost the agency, I would suspect, approximately $1 million. We were also required to make an upgrade of our CAD-AVL server infrastructure as the second item. And finally, there were costs associated with the implementation of the Enterprise Content Management System. All independent, but but aggregating up. The modification before you today would increase the amount of the current contract from $3.9 to $5.9 million. Barring any significant events, the contract would carry through until the designated termination, which is March of 2022. Bridges data workforce, there's 16% women and 8% minority. Our staff, our IT staff specifically, is very satisfied that Bridges' performance to date has been strong, and we need more of it based to help us getting through the complexities of our IT reconfiguration and network. So your approval of the resolution is requested. I will comment that the amount is budgeted in our existing FY20 IT budget. So thank you.
Questions for staff on this item? See, no, I have one question. If I add up the unanticipated expenditures, it adds up to 1.7. Yet the increase is for $2 million. Does this provide for other eventualities that may be coming also?
Yeah. Yes. When we originally did the contract, it was for the existing replacement budget that was anticipated through the next 5 years. Of course, we don't know that until we actually get to the budget season. What's approved. And each one of these had a separate budget assigned to them. So what we actually do is we give the vendor, for instance, with the CAD AVL system, the opportunity to provide us their pricing, to provide the server infrastructure, and then we compare that to the prices we have under the bigger blanket bridge data contract, and we take the one with most favorable pricing.
Okay. So it's an authorization, and if you don't use all of it, we won't use all of it.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Part of this, I think, is anticipated to say there'll be probably some other things we don't
Yes.
know that we're putting that amount in as a bit of a protection.
Okay. Well, is the board ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 19-07-54?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussions of this item?
I would just, quickly say that, I was on the board when we went through that process, and I wouldn't call it a process, but that event. And certainly, many times, we don't really look at the undercarriage of, of the vehicle, just kind of staying in the vein of buses and MAX trains, where we have this critical, infrastructure, and this is the IT piece of this. And we've got to stay on top of making these investments before something like that happens in the future. So I'm pleased that we're making this investment now, and then would love to continue to see ongoing investments, as I'm sure Tim would, ongoing investments in the unseen infrastructure of our IT, because it's so critical. We don't think about it, but it's there, and on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, we have to be making the investment so that we don't get behind that curve. Being in the software business, it's a constant changing landscape. So I think this is critical that we continue to make these investments and continue to stay on top of it and try to stay ahead of the curve to ensure that we're able to deliver the service, because we don't think about it until it's not working correctly.
Yeah, well said.
I guess just a question. So with regards to bridge data, are they do they also contract with other public transit agencies? What is their meeting? Is TriMet the only agency that they provide service to?
They have several, including other governmental bodies in the area. They're fairly widely used.
But in terms of public transit, are we the only ones that?
I'm not aware, honestly. I don't know how many they have outside of us. They're a back-end infrastructure, cloud, database, server. That's what they provide.
I was just curious because if they are servicing other customers, like other transit agencies and that are outside of Oregon, that's good information for us to have in case there are technical problems or things that they have to troubleshoot. They can sort of compare more apples to apples in terms of similar issues that transit agencies with similar software have.
The only comment I might add to this one is, as opposed to bridge data, Tim and the team, in fact, our whole organization has extensive connections and with other transit agencies on everyday IT items, through tactical ones, through strategy. So there's always a large exchange going on, whether it be Seattle or, I mean, Tim and I, just over a year ago, were up meeting with our counterparts in Utah, for example, saying, what do we have in common, what do we learn? So, and we literally went through multi-day deep dives as an example into exchanging information to mitigate risks and leverage synergies actually where we have them. So it's that relationship across other transit agencies, I think, is actually really deep on many fronts beyond just the supplier of bridge data.
Yeah, that's one of the fortunate things about being in transit is we're not in competition. So we have the Transit CIO Consortium, actually, we meet 3 times a year, as well as we have a healthy email environment going on where we're bouncing questions. Like I have a proposal to the board this morning. Does anybody have it? You know.
Good question.
Okay. Is the board ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 19-07-54?
There's a motion pending.
Have a motion?
There's a motion pending.
Oh,
There's always already.
Is that right?
Yes, Director
Thank you.
Stovall made.
So how quickly we forget.
Yeah, we're just now waiting on the vote.
That's right. We had more questions, didn't we? Thank you very much. Okay, then. All those in favor of the motion that's already been made and seconded to approve Resolution 19-07-54, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. All right, let's move on then to Resolution 19-07-55, which is authorizing a modification to a contract with CH2M Hill, Inc. for design services for the Steel Bridge Transit Improvement Project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Board President. Yes, the CH2M's design work here covers 2 components of the project. The first is to help TriMet identify short-term cost-effective projects that improve the reliability of our light rail system, particularly over the Steel Bridge. As we all know, every single train travels over that. That's the one area where all lines converge. The second is to develop a long-term and long-range concepts to improve our service while addressing the aging bridge. Those are significant projects that could result in, from a bridge replacement, or as Metro is currently studying, we may have even seen in the media recently, a tunnel underneath downtown Portland, something even I spoke about when we talked about station consolidations, even at the last board meeting. The resolution deals with the short-term solutions only, so we have to keep it vibrant and alive and healthy and safe till we get to that long-term picture. This is part of the project is at a 90% design. In order to complete the final steps now in the project and bring it to 100% design, there's additional work that's become necessary, which has resulted in increased costs that you see before you today. First, we've elected to conduct the work at the same time that the signal system on the bridge is being modernized. We're trying to synergize projects anytime we possibly can, not only for cost, but also convenience for ourselves, but particularly for minimized disruption to our customers. This will, of course, require additional project coordination. The second, we've also found opportunities here to enhance the safety of our frontline TriMet employees who will be involved in this project. To me, this is not negotiable. Those elements we just need to do. The additional cost is $700,000. It's less than TriMet's fair estimate. So the increased contract budget is included in our FY fiscal year 2020 capital budget program. And CH2M, they've performed very strong, consistent work for the agencies. You've seen a number of resolutions come forward over the years. They're a very performance-driven partner, and they've been very good and consistent on this project as well. As projected, they have achieved the 15% participation in minority, women, emerging or disabled veteran business enterprises status, and your approval of this, this initiative is requested. And happy to answer any questions.
Director Simmons.
I'll be recusing myself from the vote and discussion on this because I have a relative that works for the firm.
Okay. Other questions on the resolution and content? Yes, Director Edwards.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious as to the $700,000 increase. That's over 40% increase in the original from the original cost. Is there any way that we can get some kind of itemization or why that is such a high cost?
So I brought David Sauter here, who's been managing this project. He's a manager in the Stations and Guideways group that handles this kind of track work. The general manager alluded to some late-breaking initiatives, and David, if I could turn it over to you.
Absolutely. So to itemize that, the safety enhancements that Doug mentioned are approximately a little more than $200,000 of that. Then support for the signal upgrades that Doug also mentioned. We're trying to revamp the signal system on the steel bridge to make it modernized. And it's a good time to do it at the same time that we're doing all these track and civil upgrades. That's around $150,000. That gets you to $450,000. Then we were going to perform some work in-house for the procurement of some materials that are still remaining for the bridge. But we'd like the designer to complete that because of some resource strapping internally. So that's about $70,000 or $80,000. And then we have some design on modernizing the bridge and making it go from rail lock system to proximity sensors, and that's in the $150,000 range. So all those add up once you then apply a contingency to that $700,000 threshold.
And Director Edwards, that was scope that has come to light recently and was not part of the original proposal that the design firm had put forth to the board before.
Correct. We requested these things from the designer in addition to the base.
Okay, I think I missed something there. I had 200, 150, 80, and 150.
There was another one in the $70,000 to $80,000 range to have them take on the scoping of remaining materials for the bridge project.
I got the 80.
The 150 for the proximity sensors.
Yes, I got that.
And then contingency on top of that. Oh, design services during construction. We also have $70,000 for design services during construction.
Okay.
Does that add up, Director Edwards?
We're getting close.
Right.
I still got 650, but I guess that's close enough. Or five? No, I take that back. I've got 650.
And then if we apply our contingency, and that puts us over 700. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Glad you're checking.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you. So it sounds like the delivery model for this is going to extend the design team's involvement into the construction phase. Is this a design bid build, or are they going to be involved with having the contractor under them?
This is standard practice that we retain the designer of record into the construction. We call that design services during construction. Some in the architecture field call that construction administration, or that function. And so as the contractor provides product submittals or other things that require those professionals to certify that that's actually the right material, the right equipment, we employ those professionals to make that call for us. And so it's not design build, it'll actually be delivered CMGC, but it's really that design support, that engineering support when we're in construction. Oftentimes, folks have remodeled their homes, you open up the wall, you're, oh gosh, what is this? And so we have those professionals sort of on retainer, if you will, to address a field condition that we may need to engineer right there on the spot while, folks are standing by with equipment. So I hope that addressed your question.
No, thank you. Yes, as an architect, I'm familiar with the CA phase. I was thrown off a little when one of the line items was mentioned about a material acquisition. So that made me think, are they going to be, is this by standard now then that they'll be bringing the GC under them, or was that just an extension of what is considered construction administration?
That's a great question. So for the remaining materials, that's something that TriMet will self-procure, but normally TriMet would have to put together that package for procurement and do the development. And so that $70,000 is to have now the designer do that instead of have us do that in-house.
Is that a mechanism to help control cost of a volatile material?
I don't think it's so much cost as it is our own capacity to provide that service. I mean,
we're outsourcing.
Yeah, so we're outsourcing it.
Understood. Final question then: is it fair to anticipate that as we move further down the construction pathway, that there will be some CA services to be determined and scoped under the design contract?
I think what we have here today, Director Gonzalez, is what we believe is the full package and the full picture as it relates to the steel bridge improvement.
Including CA?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have one more question as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are we looking at down the road? In other words, what kind of lifespan are we going to have out of this? Or when is this going to have to occur again in the lifespan of this particular project in this particular area?
I think I'm not kind of qualified to give you it's 28 years or it's 35 years, but essentially this infrastructure that we're replacing has been in place since 1986. So, that's sort of, 30 plus years that this work has been in place. I would imagine that 30 years from now, a whole new group of people will be here asking these same questions.
Yeah, they're right.
So, I think Director Edwards to address your question directly, about 30 years.
Okay. I guess my concern is with technology and with some things that are happening in our environment that may not be so true. I think that may occur maybe in 20 years. That's my concern.
Okay.
And so I just thought that should be considered and certainly recommended and looked at, in a serious fashion.
Okay.
And I would add that we are hardening the system, so the type of rail that we're installing, it lasts longer than the rail that's on there currently. We're doing that with a lot of different elements. So that was part of the intent and base goal of the project.
Does seismic come into play in those
Absolutely.
Those projections as well?
We've done a seismic analysis on the steel bridge, and we are not doing any structural upgrades to the bridge itself, as that's more Union Pacific Railroad's property.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to lean into the seismic code question. Is there an increase? Is there an applicable standard as part of this project to increase the seismic capacity of the existing system? And are we limiting ourselves to the code enforced required capacity?
It's not. Our project goes from the top of the bridge deck down to the lower side of the bridge deck. So all we're replacing, and we're also net balancing the bridge 0 for 0. So anything we take off is weight that we're putting back on. So from a structural analysis standpoint, our project does not consider that.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. General Manager, do you have a comment?
Yeah, the only comment I would just perhaps come back, if I may, to Director Edwards' comment around the life cycle of the 20 years, 30 years. I would suggest it may be another event, not the technology that gets redundant. It may be the bridge itself's replacement strategy in 20 to 30 years. It may have a longer, its life cycle, it's a 100-year-old bridge now. So I think there may be other events that may trigger how long this will have to last for.
Yeah. That would be my comment also, Director Edwards. I think this bridge continues to be a hot spot for us, and it's old. It's amazing that it's lasted as long as it has, and we're doing a great job of putting it together and strengthening it. But sooner or later, this region is going to have to address that as a priority. Other questions by the board? Comments? Then is the board ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 19-07-55?
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. No further discussion? All those then in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-07-55 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Let's move on then to the next resolution, which is Resolution 19-07-56, which is an exemption from competitive bidding requirement, a contract for services for the Steel Bridge Signals and Communication Systems Equipment Project. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Board President. So this resolution authorizes the board, again, acting in its capacity as the TriMet Contract Review Board, to exempt the low bid process, the contract for construction services for the steel bridge, specifically on the Signals Communication Systems Equipment Project. try to get all those words out sequentially. The signals and communication equipment system will replace the existing system. Again, as Steve Witters indicated, that goes back to 1986. And again, the debut of our very first rail line 30 plus years ago. Every train in our system, as you know, crosses this bridge. The system replaces the existing relay system with microprocessors. We'll use hardware that requires less maintenance time and is more reliable. Again, when one train breaks down, the sequencing of all trains backs up very, very quickly, as we in fact have seen. It will contribute to improved on-time performance across our light rail network. An exemption from low bidding allows TriMet to select contractors using the competitive RFP process and broadens the consideration to include other factors, not just price. If granted, we'll pursue an RFP and select the most high qualified proposer for this contract. And the final amount of the work is projected to be approximately $1.8 million. It will be included, if approved by you today, in future fiscal year engineering and construction budget requests. But we can't get ahead of the future, so this is an important piece because you have to agree to this so we can actually accomplish all the logistics and the spending that goes with it. So we're not. It would come with future commitments for future budgets. With that, your approval is recommended.
Questions on this? Yes, Director Edwards.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have a question regarding the fact that on July 5th there was no, there was a hearing, but no one attended, and there was no comment at all. No written comment was received. No input from anyone at all. And that concerns me because of the date, simply because it was after the 4th of July. That's 4th of July weekend, and perhaps there was no one.
I think it's Director Edwards. It's not uncommon for these hearings to go unattended. I do get your point about that sort of being that kind of funky Friday after the 4th of July. I would certainly say that we would take that into consideration the next time we schedule a public hearing around a holiday. I think that's a really good point. I would say it's not uncommon for these hearings to go unattended, though.
And you've received no follow-up or any complaints about that?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good point.
Other questions? Yes.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this resolution to the table. I appreciate the intent to open up the procurement pathway to be able to have a more value-based approach. And I think that there are definitely instances where the low bid mechanism is preferable. There are instances where a more best value approach is preferable. I tend to favor the best value approach more often than not. I wonder, in this specific instance, what prompted this approach in this specific instance, and are there still places where the low bid is a more amenable option for getting the most value out of our procurement process?
Sure, that's a great question, and we're always looking to match the right procurement method with the best value for the agency. When it comes to this, systems equipment is what we kind of refer to it as. There's the civil side, the concrete, and then the systems, the electronics that help run our railroad. There are several factors that go into that. The way that there are different manufacturers of these equipment configurations. There are microprocessors. We're replacing sort of the traditional kind of telephone relays with microprocessors. So each manufacturer has their own equipment that that they supply, and so we call this kind of procurement for the systems to be sort of design, furnish, and install. And compatibility with our existing system is extremely important. And our procurement methods don't really allow us to specifically point to, you will use firm X, Y, and Z. That's sort of a sole source approach. So we use the performance requirements to select the best contractor, and then We actually send them off to design the system using their particular equipment that they manufacture or employ. So it's a little bit of a kind of design build, if you will. So, and addressing compatibility is one key.
It's a great method, and I could see where the more complicated instances, especially where you need it all to work across many moving parts, is a good method. I'm just curious why we ever use low bid at this point.
Why we ever use low bid? Well, I think there are instances and where the project objectives are very clear, and well, you know, one of the, I think the conditions that is unique to TriMet is we are doing a lot of work in an active right-of-way. And so that provides a level of complexity in a lot of these cases where working with a contractor to plan that work and to, oh, hi.
Replacements coming in.
And
the cavalry just arrived.
And plan the work. But Director Gonzalez, you know, we do look for straightforward, we look to applying the standard low bidding practice where projects are straightforward.
So allow me to introduce Kevin Yin, who's our Director of Procurement Services. So good. Kevin.
Welcome.
So to answer your question, it is when the project is well defined is when we actually go to the low bid, because everybody can, where price is the only factor that we're looking at.
So I might just add to combine both of them. So there's the definition of the project, and there's also the risk elements within the project that, in fact, where there is higher risk inherently, we may want to manage our risk accordingly through more flexibility. Where price, you may be technically right on low price, but what you buy is what you've locked into. You better know it's going to work. And so I think we're trying to manage both of those elements. Particularly, you can see these come up where you have complex railways. It's not, and you just saw one of the earlier resolutions, which in fact we did have low bid. So we do use low bid, but some of these complexity, particularly around a railway signaling system, things of that nature, environmental things of those things, just bring that immense complexity. So I'd say it's a combination of both those answers.
Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that information, and just to reflect on it a little, it sounds to me like it's not so much the size of a contract, but it's really the complexity of the contract that would drive this primary procurement channel decision.
Yes.
So I think that's a very wise approach.
Yes.
Just a comment to follow up on that. Has it ever been considered to use language such as lowest responsible bidder, or is that a legal challenge?
I think, well, I'll leave that to Kevin. Thank you for being here.
So when we always look at, it's the lowest bid, but also the most responsible. They also have to be responsible, meaning that they have to have the capacity to actually be able to perform that work. So they may be a low bid, but if they don't have the capacity to perform that work, they would not be responsible, and they would be rejected. So
I would imagine the same is true if they're unresponsive in the form of an incomplete bid.
That's right. Exactly right.
That's where we're covered.
I guess I just throw my 2 bits on this one. I think if there's any place I want to have, you know, somebody that could look, knowing what they're doing and is dealing with a complex project, it's here again on the Steel Bridge. Yes. Where it's old. There's a lot of unknowns, and they're going to be making decisions as they move forward that are going to be critical to keeping that facility open for traffic and for our light rail. So this is a really good example. I think this is the right competitive process to use rather than a low bid. And I think, again, if it's straightforward, we're having a new building, or we're building, it's a whole lot easier to go with a low bid. But this is one where I think this is the right decision for the agency.
Agreed. And I think it provided a great opportunity for us to understand it and for the public to understand a little better the logic behind how you make that decision. Thank you.
Yeah, good discussion. All right, is the board feeling comfortable to offer a motion to approve Resolution 19-07-56?
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll let the staff figure out who actually was first on the trigger on the second there. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those then in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-07-56, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, let's move to our last resolution, which is Resolution 19-07-57, which is authorizing a special procurement exemption for professional learning and development services.
Thank you, Mr. Board President, members of the board. So firstly, E3, what does that stand for? So for us, it stands for Engage, Empower, and Expand. This is a program that provides a lot of learning opportunities for our employees to deepen their professional development at TriMet. It supports our business plan strategic goal of strengthening the TriMet team. What you have before you, as the board president's indicated, we're looking for an exemption here as TriMet's entered into contracts with about 10 vendors who facilitate these classes and the lectures. We believe the small size of these training courses does not warrant a full-scale solicitation process. The proposed alternative request for applications will allow TriMet to recruit disadvantaged, minority-owned, women-owned, and emerging individuals as firms we have done in the past. The funding for the program is covered under our Labor Relations Human Resources budget in fiscal 2020, and we do recommend that your approval of this resolution, and we have our experts of Darcy and Zach here to answer any questions you may have technically.
Okay. Questions, comments by the board? I think what you're seeing is we want to continue. Oh, here we go.
Sorry, took me a while to get this get this question. So under the procurement process, I'm just looking at the first paragraph. It says that we would accept applications from qualified and interested firms and individuals throughout the course of the 2-year period. Can you just explain why the rationale for a 2-year period and not other times?
So the 2-year period is what we've been doing in the past. And we think it's a good, I think it's a good length of time to give people an opportunity to see the solicitation, send in an application, and for it to be sort of fresh. And then after that 2-year period, sort of pull it, reassess, see where our needs lie, how effective the process has been going for that 2-year period.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I would add to that, as the program manager, that it really allows us that opportunity to create a clearinghouse for a variety of different topics that we would be delivering to employees. So again, it creates that nimbleness and flexibleness, and 2 years I think is just probably the right amount to where then we close that out, kind of regroup, and then offer the opportunity for those new businesses, new consultants to then offer their services as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Director Edwards.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a great idea. My question would be, do you have an evaluation process to see how beneficial it has been with the employees? And is it mandatory for all employees?
To answer your first question, Director Edwards, yes, absolutely. We have an evaluation post-class that employees complete through currently SurveyMonkey program, and we monitor those periodically, both to see how people are feeling in terms of how they can utilize those skills that they're gaining on the job, getting instructor feedback as well, and then taking a look at what those comments are and revising the programs as needed to best meet the needs of employees. In terms of being mandatory, there are very few classes that are required at this point. They are open to, as a point of clarification in the background, all employees, not just non-union employees, with manager supervision, of course, or permission rather. So at this point, there are some classes in terms of respectful workplace that are required for all employees. And certainly managers are encouraged to attend certain classes to build their skills. So no, not at this point are there many required classes.
Has there been any kind of evaluation to figure out why that would be more beneficial if everyone participated in that training?
To this point, no. There's certainly philosophies around when you mandate all training that you get a lot of resistance, and maybe it's not having the desired impact because you don't have sort of willing learners, if you will.
Yes.
So there's certainly different philosophies around that. I would advocate that we would strongly encourage employees to attend certain programs, and we're seeing some of that as we think about diversity initiatives in particular, and again, professional workplace, and certainly aspects around employment law. We expect that hiring managers in particular are well apprised of that information, and so we do require them to go to classes on those topics.
Okay. The reason I ask that is because I'm a retired union electrician, and in this state, you have to have CTEs, and if you don't have those CTEs, you don't have a license anymore, regardless of whether you want to take those classes or not.
Those types of continuing education requirements are managed more by each division and their operations training, so they do keep close line of sight to that as well, and ensuring that they're in compliance. The E3 program really focuses more on agency-wide professional learning and development.
Thank you.
Point taken, and absolutely agree in the importance of that.
Thank you very much.
Director Gonzalez.
Thank you, Director Warner. In addition to the activities mentioned here in the background around the E3 program, I hear you mentioning the potential for diversity type of topics. Are there programs either within or outside of the current E3 program that help those folks that are facing public service positions where they're more outward facing to address with things like cultural competency, or for the fair enforcement folks, for example, on navigating through working with people that might have PTSD or mental instability issues out in the public? Are there any of those sorts of factors? Does the Language Access Plan provide insight for any potential E3 programs that come out of that?
Absolutely, Mr. Gonzalez. We certainly are working with the Language Access Plan to figure out how we can best provide training through the E3 program for those types of engagements. We're certainly early days in terms of building out that plan again. That was created over 10 years ago. So I'm working closely with that team in those respects. And in terms of other diversity initiatives, sort of building on and supporting the Diverse Workforce Management Initiative that was brought to the board last September, we have implemented and have some ongoing cultural agility training happening, as well as bias awareness training happening. That's actually a course that is required for all hiring managers and anyone who sits on an employee hiring panel as well. So in terms of other types of diversity, yes, we've been working with different organizations that address disability and empowerment in employment as well. And so it's certainly on our radar and looking to build out the diversity offerings through the E3 program.
Glad I asked. Thank you. You've provided
Glad to
great
answer.
information.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, and to that end, I'm glad that we're still in those early times where engaging where the possible training opportunities are. I will extend that. I know within the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, there's several partners that have a vested interest in making sure that the agency is responsive to the unique needs of the populations that they serve. So I see opportunities there for either a partnership or potentially reaching out to some of those community service organizations for either helping advise on curriculum or maybe even participating in trainings themselves. So we're learning better how to leverage those relationships, and I see opportunities there.
Agreed. I look forward to those continuing partnerships as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. Other questions?
I think my question is just really exciting to see this work getting started. And just as a board, when would we expect to see, just maybe a halfway mark check-in, or a year from now? These are some of the things that your group will produce, just so that we know that this is happening efficiently, but also that this is continuing to be a part of, at least for me, the business plan and just like the larger mission and vision of our agency.
Yes, in terms of the diversity initiatives, I do believe we have an obligation to report back to the board in September around those diverse workforce management commitments. So we'll be providing updates. in terms of that. And with the E3 program going into about 2.5 years, again, as I'd mentioned, we're doing evaluations, continually revising the curriculum, looking at both internal subject matter experts to provide a training and give them development opportunities to teach their peers, as well as looking for really the best in class offerings here in the Northwest region to present other topics that we may not have an internal expert. So certainly ongoing and developing, and happy to provide more metrics in the fall.
What I might just suggest to this one, I think it's a really good question, is one, you will hear in September, as Darcy's already indicated, but I would suggest, particularly as it relates to this resolution, that staff and management come back a year from now to keep us on task, because we do have the business plan that will continue to be part of that conversation. But I think it's an area I really would like to keep a focus on this, and I think coming back in a year, if you're comfortable, I think would give management enough time to really unfold some of the programs, assess ones that are working, but also don't get too far away where we aren't getting feedback and other adaptations that are needed. So.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We do not yet have a motion on the floor. Is there, is the board feeling questions here? And is the board ready to offer a motion to approve resolution 19-07-57?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Good, we're moving forward here. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 19-07-57, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion is approved unanimously. And we will look forward to seeing what's going on in the year. It'd be great to keep us up to date.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input. All right, how's the board doing? Do we need to take a break before we get into the ordinances? I think we need 5 minutes here. So let's give it 5 minutes if we can do it. We'll get started. All right, I think the mic's on. That'll get the attention here.
Oh, good.
I know we're all conducting business, so it's all right. But I think we need to move on to the ordinances. And ordinance 355, the second reading, closure of Kings Hill Station. And I would like to turn to our General Counsel, Ms. Shelley Devine, for the second reading of this ordinance by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Ordinance number 355 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon to close the Kings Hill Southwest Salmon Mac Station to review and evaluate the effects of the station closure. This is the second reading.
Thank you very much. Mr. General Manager, do you have any comments before we dig into this one a little bit more?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Board President. Just a couple of quick comments for not only this ordinance 355 and let alone 356. We have technical staff here should there be any questions by the board, but I would just suggest to reframe, if you could go back to the last board meeting we had where we gave an extensive presentation and extensive materials to all of you, and I just ask you to think about that in context and happy to answer any questions, but I think you've got the information before you now, so I would turn it back to you.
Thank you. Yes, so as you said, we've heard from the general manager and staff in the past on this, and we've had, I think you all know, we've had a substantial outreach on this issue, and we've heard from the potentially affected community about potential changes. We heard from community members this morning. We heard from them a lot at the hearing at our last month's meeting, and frankly, we've heard from for probably the last 3 or 4 months during the public forum portion of our meetings. So where I think we are is I think the board has been briefed on the equity analysis, and at the last meeting I think the board indicated that you were understanding and approved of its findings. So I would ask, is there any discussion on that or this ordinance at this time before we actually go into the motion? Director Gonzalez?
Yes. I had a question. I was curious about the framing of this particular ordinance. The 1 year, what looks like a review period closure. It wasn't entirely clear what the expected benefits or what knowledge we expect to gain in that year's time frame that might help inform what happens after that. I don't know even where to direct the question.
Yep. Well, you can start with me, but we'll call up Grant and or Bernie as well. I think part of it was also to look at, is there sometimes when you make recommendations such as this, you want to make sure you've captured things, and sometimes you may miss something, particularly in the area of anything significant and safety. I want to make sure that is captured over a review period. And I don't believe there is, but I want to be respectful of the community of how the service is provided to. Otherwise, frankly, it probably would have come forward as just a straight closure. So we just wanted to take that extra pause. Let's evaluate it for a period of time to be sensitive, again, particularly in the area of safety.
Anything else to add to that?
No, I think the general manager hit the points. One of the things that we wanted to see, one of the concerns that was raised is about queuing at the other stations, about station platform crowding and so forth. So this also provides an opportunity to see whether that issue materializes. We don't think that it will. Our analysis shows that it won't, but we wanted to give this opportunity to evaluate that.
I wouldn't add anything. Yeah, well captured.
Did that answer your question, Director Gonzalez?
It does. Yes,
okay,
thank you.
Yes.
So I think my comment is also what I said publicly at the last board meeting, which was, what is our continued community engagement outreach efforts for these two particular closures, Kings Hill and the Mall Southwest 4th and 5th, in respect to some of the Lincoln High School students who, did come and say that they were concerned about taking a different transit line, especially after school hours, some of the parents, neighborhood associations, folks from the disability community. So
just if you can just reiterate that. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but because we are voting on this today, if you can just reiterate what that outreach and that plan would look like.
Yeah, so we will do extensive outreach to the customer community at these platforms, obviously, to let them know well in advance that the platforms are going to change, to make sure that they understand what the alternative platforms are that are available to them. And then we'll be doing outreach with Mac Club, the church, Lincoln High School, and all the other sort of surrounding businesses and institutions around Kings Hill, to make sure that they understand, the most appropriate route to get to the alternatives. And then in addition, we've worked with our Executive Director of Safety and Security, and we will be working with the school to identify times when the student population would appreciate some additional presence in the area, to make sure that we're adding security in those times of the day that are of issue.
Yeah, I might just add to that, those comments, that I think we also need to, there's a development going on there. There may be working with our partners at the City of Portland around extra lighting, things of that nature, particularly around that construction zone as you come from the Kings Hill station around the corner to Providence Park Station. I think there's the people issues we talked about for presence, but there's also, I think, some lighting septet elements that I think that might be brought into this. And the other part is, in the closure of a Kings Hill station, even on a longer term basis, what do we want to do with that? And I think we need to engage the community. Could it turn into a garden? Could it turn into a Nike bike location, as the streetcar does literally in front of, the streetcar did when it closed the station right in front of our own location at First and Harrison? What could that platform be used for that's actually a benefit to the community that may not be a stop? So use it in a positive way.
And on the heels of that, thank you, Manager Kelsey, for that comment. Are we waiting for a year before beginning that conversation about what we can do there? Or are we initiating that conversation in the 1 year periodic closure? What is proposed for that piece of it?
Well, I think it's something we sure welcome feedback from the community on, but I think the intention here is subject to something significant I call on the safety side, whether it be queuing or other such things. The intention here is with this ordinance to close that station, but then right after that, I think we would start those conversations. And in fact, there already has been a few conversations already quietly started, if you will, unofficially, but we'd more officialize it.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, because that was one of my initial concerns, I think, in the way the ordinance was proposed, is there was a proposed 1 year closure period to review, and I didn't see language speaking to the effect of, in addition to reviewing the impacts of a closure, starting to review the potential for what that piece of real estate could be in lieu of a station. And so that was one place where I thought there's a lot of benefit to not waiting after the year. What I'm hearing is that there is the intention is not to wait to begin that conversation a year from now, but to take the steps forward to begin that conversation in parallel to the review of the impacts of a closure. So I really appreciate that. If there's ever a place where I would recommend in making sure that that's explicit, it would be, I think, in that area. That's one of the places where I had the most pause for how we take advantage of a 1 year period to really explore the possibilities, not just the what happens if we close it.
I think with this this ordinance in front of you is part of coming back in the year would actually be part of that conversation, or sooner.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion then to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion? Seeing none?
Actually,
go ahead.
Discussion. As I've been on the board, almost 8 years. It's heartening to see folks come out and individuals being involved and engaged. Greatly appreciate that and their perspectives. We saw a lot of the public comment in regards to some of these closures. And, I would say what I'm saying here is kind of an overall statement across all of the things that we've experienced over the last few months in regards to this. So very heartened by the focus and everybody being engaged in this process, and greatly appreciate all the insight that we received both publicly and then as a board. We've also received quite a bit of correspondence through email and written items that not everybody gets a chance to see, and so it's been a really balanced approach of being able to look at all of these things. And from where I sit, I think having the opportunity to evaluate a few of these opportunities similar to what we're doing here, which I'm supportive of, and then what we're doing over at Skidmore Fountain. I think all of this is appropriate in regards to as we move forward, and I applaud the overall process. I mean, I think this is one that has impressed me, both from our ability to get the information and data, and then also listening to everybody that's come forward. I know everybody will have their own perspective of the process, but as many processes I've been a part of, I thought this one was one that really took a lot of things into consideration, and we listened, and I think we've come up with a solution or a varied source of solutions that actually have the opportunity to help us move forward in a way that's going to honor, all the things that have been said. So from where I sit, I'm supportive of this ordinance, and moving forward, I will be in favor of it.
Thank you. I have a different take on that, Director Stovall, in regards to the process itself, although I fully appreciate that we are looking at helping make a more effective regional system. I think by and large, the way in which the question was posed to the community and the way in which the community has responded has illustrated to me, I think part of the tension in this decision today is essentially how much are we helping make an effective regional system versus how much are we ensuring preserving an effective local centralized system. And what's become very clear to me in the process is that we can't have one tool doing all of those things. So I do agree with helping make an effective regional system. I don't necessarily think we put the conversation forward enough of what do we do to ensure that the centralized system is being optimized as well. And I believe there's an opportunity in that piece of the conversation so that the tension between what we're doing to make downtown less convenient at the behest of making the region more convenient doesn't necessarily need to be a tug of war, essentially. So there's a challenge I see in making sure that as we move forward to making an optimization strategy, that we bring forward the same temperament of a conversation for optimizing the internal, centralized, more fine-grained mobility with the regional, more, I would say, coarse-grained, more mobility platforms. And this optimization strategy put a lot of conversation around the regional optimization, and I think a lot of the reactions we got in the community came from the sense that we were not putting the same temperament of optimization at the central downtown mobility. And I think that's where we saw a lot of folks really feeling the tension between what we're trying to do in the local neighborhood that might make it more challenging for me to go those extra block or extra 2 blocks for my day-to-day internal downtown movement versus I can actually hop on the train and go experience bigger or farther places than I'm used to. So, in the regard of process, I think we have done a fantastic job of bringing the conversation of optimization to the community. We've provided an opportunity to hear about how they feel about optimization. I don't think anyone was resistant to the concept of optimization. It's in the putting centralized mobility at the expense of regional mobility is where I saw a lot of the tension. And I think it doesn't let us have enough of the conversation for how we maintain the importance of optimizing the fine-grained centralized district as well. And I think that's one of the pieces that gives me more cause for concern about the the temporary closure as not necessarily enough of a conversation for what can we do in lieu of this space, but it's still not having the conversation of how do we ensure that we're maintaining an optimum centralized mobility platform, or perhaps how are we improving upon the current central district mobility platforms. And that's where I struggled with seeing that tension built into the this or that choice point that was presented to the community.
Actually, I could just. Actually, Director Gonzalez, everything you said, I think, was on point. I don't disagree with any of that. I think when we talk about something of this magnitude, it's going to cause tension, and the things you reference in regards to having the additional conversation around, what are ultimate solutions? How do we balance exactly what you said with the central core, with the broader region conversation? I agree completely. I think those things. I think the solutions are the ordinances that are being proposed allows for that further conversation, and I would encourage us to continue in the conversation, not let the 12 months go by without looking at some of these challenges and things that you just referenced. And I think what you said is absolutely on point, and I agree with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Stovall. So yeah, I think that it's inherent in the way in which our representative structure is at the board, that we do have geographic districts we represent, and I know that in part that's inherently built into making sure that the unique geographic stakeholders are reflected in the governance structure and in the voting structure. So I'm uniquely, I think, attuned to this conversation in the central district, because my district happens to encompass all of the areas of the proposed closures. And as much as I'm also very much in agreement with the equity side of the conversation in helping those that are getting pushed out into the edges of our region and having to commute those longer distances, as much as I know that we have to be very much attuned to them, there's a special obligation, I feel, in making sure that the voices of those within the districts I represent are also brought to the fold. So I'm not here to sway votes, but I do have to represent that in reflecting the district I serve. I need to make sure that it's accounted for, that there is another pool at this tension. And I do so not so much to say I don't like what's happening, but I think it serves the record well to show that there are dual interests in making sure that we're optimizing both regional and centralized platforms. And I look forward to the upcoming year and of conversation with this station, and I'd say the upcoming conversations that are on the horizon about how we continue to optimize the regional system and the central system.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Director Gonzalez as well as Director Stovall that this is a challenging decision, but I think this is the right decision. What I really appreciated was the fact that I was able to visit the site, and visiting the station gives you a much different perspective on what is entailed in the folks that actually have that experience on a daily basis. So I think that I appreciate that, because that helped give me a different perspective as well. So I think that decision is still a challenging decision, but at the same time, it's a decision that I think we'll certainly closely monitor to make sure that we're not impacting folks in a negative way. And it's not a final decision. That's what I really appreciate.
I just wanted to quickly say thank you to our writers and to the public for turning out and weighing in on this issue. We did. Please know the board heard everything that was said, and we read all the material that was submitted to us in writing, and we really do appreciate the public input. Speeding up transit is important to our goal of increasing ridership, but at the same time, we're in the customer service business, and we want to keep folks happy. So your input has been tremendously important to us.
Any other comments?
In closing,
All right.
Before we vote, because I didn't know if we were doing a roll call vote. Is
We're
it?
doing a
It
roll
will be a
call
roll call
vote.
vote. Okay. So before we get into that moment, my take on the 1 year closure is that it's going to be important in that 1 year to have a deeper relationship, a deeper understanding for what happens next. It will require great engagement with the community stakeholders. Clearly, this proposed question of the community has brought out a lot of interest. From my perspective, I think we will save ourselves 6 months of conversation if we begin that 1 year discussion, not with a closure, but with a deliberate conversation about what's the best use of that real estate while we have all these moving parts. Again, without knowing yet whether a 1 year closure constitutes any change to the physical infrastructure of that island, or if it's simply that a sign says the bus doesn't stop here anymore. I believe that setting the right foot forward with the local community around Kings Hill is going to be more fruitful if we begin a review period instead of with a closure, with a forecasted proposition for what we can do in lieu of. That's where I think it may behoove us to take an approach of that nature, and I'll leave it at that.
All right. I think the board has done a great job of identifying the trade-offs, and again, I also want to thank everybody who took the time to come in and talk with us. This is a rough decision. I think from my perspective, we've done a pretty good job of balancing the regional and local with the work that's been done. So I'm going to be supportive of this ordinance, but it does point out we've got to work on this, and I think the region is recognizing, and maybe through what's looking at undergrounding of the transit system in the future is a way to help deal not only with the through traffic, but also then repurposing some of the system that's on the surface to be more of a streetcar oriented type of system. So I think this is the right way to go, and I look forward to seeing what we learn over the next year. So with that, I'm going to ask our general counsel to do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. We'll start with Director Edwards.
Yes.
Director Simmons.
Yes.
Director Warner.
Yes.
Director Stovall.
Yes.
Director Bauman.
Yes.
Director Gonzalez.
No.
Director Way.
Yes.
Ordinance 355 is adopted.
Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on to our last action item of the day is Ordinance 356, which is the second reading of the ordinance dealing with the proposal to permanently close the Mall Southwest 4th Avenue and Mall Southwest 5th Avenue MAX stations. General Counsel Devine, could you please read this ordinance by title only?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Ordinance number 356 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon to close the Mall Southwest 4th Avenue and Mall Southwest 5th Avenue MAX stations, and this is the second reading.
Thank you very much. Mr. General Manager, do you have any other further comments on this?
No supplemental comments that haven't already been presented earlier.
Again, I think we heard again from the community, and you know the outreach that's been given. We also looked at the equity analysis, which I think the board indicated you understood and approved the last time. So I think we should see if there's any further discussion on this ordinance by the board. So I'll open it up for that now. Director Gonzalez.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Full of, it must be all the coffee. So in this one, I was curious about the financial budget impact. I wasn't sure if this has changed at all since we were last discussing what happens upon closure there. Is the intent then still, should this ordinance pass, the infrastructure along the 4th and 5th stops would all be pulled out, and that's where the financial impact is coming from?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of pieces of the financial impact. One is the removal of the shelters and other equipment. The other is to install rail control equipment in the street that allows the trains to speed through that area of town. So it's both removal of equipment, but it's also installing new train to wayside controls so that the the signal system and the train can be more closely linked together.
And follow up on that. So, is the passing of this ordinance going to trigger an RFP process for a design or a redesign, as it were, of those two station areas?
As the general manager mentioned, we've had preliminary conversations with the city of Portland about what they'd like to see that platform area look like, but we haven't concluded those yet, so that the financial impact is an estimate at this point, kind of an envelope that we expect to be within, but the details of that we'll have to work out with the city of Portland.
And are the design services something then the city would be procuring since it's a city right-of-way?
To be determined at this point. We will do the equipment removal. We're hoping to minimize any reconstruction of the sidewalk and so forth in that area. And the city's preliminary indication is they'd like to minimize that as well, because they're interested in retaining the character of the platform in case, in the eventuality that we go underground, they can run streetcar there. And they'll have a ready-made platform that's accommodates streetcar.
Thank you.
I would comment on the cost of the signaling issues will all be behind the scenes. It's not as though it'll be public impacting. These are things that tie up the street signals in addition to the train signals. So it's all behind the scenes work.
Thank you.
Are there comments or questions on this ordinance?
Just in final, I just want to express my gratitude for what I would say an ordinance, a proposal that is a very clean-cut, deliberate step towards what we're ultimately trying to do. I really appreciate that there's a clarity here. It makes it a much cleaner decision to make, and I think it eliminates a lot of the questions I had in the previous ordinance around what we're trying to get out of a temporary phase conversation. So I just wanted to appreciate that we put together 3 ideas. We heard from the community, and we came with 3 different scenarios for how to approach it based on the feedback. I think this one struck a very nice balance of the clarity of intent. Thank you.
Anything else? Is there a motion then to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further dialogue or discussion? Seeing none then, I'm going to ask General Counsel to do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. This time we'll start with Director Way.
Yes.
Director Gonzalez.
Yes.
Director Bauman.
Yes.
Director Stovall.
Yes.
Director Warner.
Yes.
Director Simmons. Yes. Director Edwards.
Yes.
Ordinance 356 passes unanimously.
All right. I believe that is the last item on our agenda for today. Is there anything that needs to come before the board, Mr. General Manager, that we don't know about?
Not at this time.
Anything else from the board? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. And maybe we'll take just a very quick brief break for you to allow staff to come up for our briefings.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
All right.
Don't go looking at my paper, guys. And taking my
Make
answers.
sure I get the right answer.
Don't go taking my answers off my paper.
Okay, I'll just set the stage and turn it over to our highly talented experts. I think you know both Jeff Owen and Carrie Ayers-Palanek, who work in the transportation planning side of things. So this is a follow-up from previous board updates we brought to not only Finance and Audit Committee, but the General Board. And this is really to review what we believe is the direction we want to set, but looking for your feedback on all the critical elements of our ridership plan. So just with that, I'm just going to turn over to our two experts here and leave it to you.
Great, thank you very much. Quick overview of today. We're going to talk about the process that we went through in the ridership plan briefly and get right into the priority recommendations. As part of that, we do have a quick snapshot of some recent ridership updates, and then we'll talk about public input and next steps moving forward. So you might remember this slide we brought to you, I think, in May 15th, with a lot of initiatives for different ways that our agency could look to increase ridership on our system. There's a lot of things on this screen, and last time we kind of walked through some of these in terms of low cost, medium cost, high cost, and on the bottom, kind of lower ridership impact over to higher ridership impact. So what we essentially have done since last time we've come to you in May is we have gone through a little bit more of a process of ranking initiatives, taking a closer look at all the initiatives that were on that previous screen and even some extras as well, and ranking those initiatives by more or less mostly five factors. The time to implement each of those initiatives, the ridership impact we could expect from each initiative, taking a look at the geographic coverage and opportunities to remove any barriers to riding our system, the cost to implement, which is both capital as well as operating, as we know there's an initial cost and then we have to think about how to continue that if there's any operating costs attached to it. And then the last one, the feasibility and risk, to really kind of think through this new idea or a new initiative. Is it feasible? Does it have risk that we need to take into consideration? And the top bullet there is really important, that for each of these initiatives, they're all very different. Some of them might be geographically based within our service area, others might be across the whole spectrum. And so we really want to highlight that for each of these initiatives, we are going to apply an equity lens to inform all of them. So that applies to every initiative that we're going to talk about. On the right is just a quick mention of some of the key strategies in a sense of buckets. So they fall into kind of categories. And I'll just read the headings off real quick. The service improvements or expansion, something that might be focused on customer experience. The third, operations practices and efficiencies. And number four, public policy and partnerships might be things that are a little beyond direct TriMet focus that we would lean on partners to support. So from that last busy chart of all the initiatives, what's left on this slide are the top priorities, 8 or 9 total, that we will walk through today. So we've got a slide on each of these, so we'll try to hit these and give you the overview, and we can come back for questions as well if you need. But this also kind of shows that of the top ranked initiatives according to that criteria, these exist from lower ridership impact to medium all the way to high, and they vary in cost as well. So we're going to walk through each of these and talk a little bit more about them. This slide does just simply list those 9 to be clear, if the last slide was pretty small font. So the first priority improvement that went through this process and was looked at among all these areas of the criteria is to make transit priority improvements. Things like we've just seen on Southwest Madison and downtown Portland, helping targeted projects to improve bus speed and reliability and reducing bus delay. the slightly new thought here is to make sure and pair these improvements, of course, with marketing so that existing riders and potential future riders know that we, with our partners, are making these investments to really amplify the improvement of that piece of infrastructure. So to really make sure and tell folks about it, and then to really show the results. So the top image here is the Southwest Madison that has now gone in place, and the bottom image is a sample of Northwest Everett that's soon to come, that would be buses approaching the steel bridge from Northwest Everett. The second area that really came out scoring very high through the criteria was to prioritize making sure that riders and the public see the presence and visibility on the system. That's something we hear directly from riders, from best practices with other peer agencies, from consultants, as well as from some of our own attitude and awareness surveys. The third item that we really see as that scored very well, and these are in kind of ranked order, is increasing peak hour service specifically. This is aimed at accommodating more riders during peak commute hours. This has multiple benefits, including relieving congested buses and trains. This provides provides room for additional new riders in the commute hours, and it adds frequency, and it even reduces for those of you who ride the bus a bit, might see is sometimes we actually have pass-ups. If we have a packed bus, there's not always space for riders to get on and join the ride. So this would meet demand and improve the customer experience in peak commute hours. Number 4 is investing in higher capacity buses. So this would be specifically looking at adding higher capacity buses to carry more passengers per vehicle. So for example, an articulated bus, like what will be coming with Division Transit Project, and this image here is C-Tran Vine, expands the seated passenger capacity about 60% and increases the chance that a rider will get a seat on board versus standing. They, of course, still accommodate rider standing, but it increases the chance of riders getting a seat and improves comfort. The fifth item that scored very well in our exercise is a collection of initiatives that improve customer experience. So this is that overall journey that really retains riders that we have and attracts new riders who might be car commuters or something else now to entice them to ride our system. This includes keeping our assets clean, making security improvements, reflecting mobility advancements that you've recently seen in our updated vision, mission, and values, and further integration of mobility technology so that our customers and new customers have all the tools at their disposal. The sixth item is something that's a little bit newer for our region. It would be looking into a limited stop commuter bus service. So this is something that offers faster service between key activity centers with fewer stops along the way. So we currently have maybe 2 examples of this, but not a whole lot. We have 2 examples on the screen here. Line 30 does have an express trip into downtown, and line 14 in the afternoons has a couple of express trips that go from downtown eastbound. So there's no stops between Southwest First on the downtown side and Cesar Chavez on the east side. So something like that is what we would perhaps study more and look at ways to implement that. So we would investigate those options, and this could include utilizing shoulders of highways where applicable. So thinking about that with our partners who have the highways. Number 7, add more off-peak bus service. So earlier specifically for commuter hours, this one kind of separate but complementary for off-peak. So we're trying to capture more ridership outside of our current peak commute times, which really increases the availability of customers reaching our service, especially those who rely on our service throughout the whole day. So just want to point out a recent gain in off-peak includes a 1.8% increase in ridership during an average weekday in the off-peak time, and weekend ridership increase of just over 5% of a similar nature. Number 8, expand, should have spelled out there, transit-oriented development, TOD, and real estate programs. So this would be increasing density of development right at transit stations. This could include limiting car parking spaces that are available, so it really pushes people to know that transit's a good option and easier to use for them. They're physically closer in proximity, and it fundamentally improves access to transit for all those folks who are right at the stations and stops, promoting livability and really strengthening ridership and growth over time. The 3 photos here are just some samples, but into the future, I think we could all expect we might be looking at cases where we are even more perhaps intense than these examples we have here in our region to draw on. Number 9, we've changed the head of this title just a little bit to make sure we stress this as a regional initiative. So number 9 would be investing in transit priority corridors regionally. So this is a much bigger effort. The very first one we highlighted was kind of more about spot improvements that might help a bus line or several bus lines at a spot or a certain intersection. This one is more about full transit corridor improvements, which could include things like signal priority dedicated lanes or all-door boarding as well. So up here to our north, Rapid Ride has really seen great increases in ridership for the Rapid Ride improvements, which are a package of improvements compared to the more or less regular routes that previously served those areas. And of course, an image here from some of our planning work on Division Transit Project. We did want to take a brief minute and just mention we have seen some growth on bus lines across our system where we've made certain types of service adjustments. So the lines on the screen that we see now, the Red Line Max, as well as several bus lines have seen specific increases in ridership due to different service enhancements we've made. The next bullet there refers to peak and off-peak headway adjustments on different bus lines, or some of the same bus lines. And then more and new weekend service as well. So I know we didn't list out every single one of these lines, but the point carries into the chart that we've looked at different improvements per line to try to make sure and match meeting demand and making improvements to increase ridership through a number of different categories. So that was a very brief overview. We still have, of course, more work to do. That's our priority recommendations. We do need to take this next to CAT. Teac was mentioned, August is canceled, so soon after, early fall. We need to engage the Riders Club through perhaps a survey and get more customer feedback on this. And then, of course, talk more thoroughly with our regional partners who are involved in many of these efforts. And with that, I think I'll turn it to Carrie.
Thanks. So you've heard the initiatives from our consultant that has prioritized the initiatives to increase ridership on the system. So what are we doing now and in the future? Many of the initiatives we already have in place. For instance, making the transit priority improvements. For the last couple of years, we've worked with the City of Portland to change the signal system or striping in about 10 different locations. Those locations have seen a decrease in travel time between 4 seconds and 4 minutes per trip. So some of those are really significant and are helping our riders move easier. We're going to be working with the City of Portland on their Rose Lane project that Commissioner Udaly is behind. And that's going to be where there'll be a bus-only lane or spot improvements on a little wider scale. Prioritizing security improvements in the FY20 budget. We have more security personnel, so more people that you've heard about earlier today. Increasing peak hour service. We have done that with the HB 2017 funding. We will continue to do that. Investing in higher capacity buses. We are planning a budget request in FY21 for more articulated buses for lines other than just Division Transit Project. There we go. Improve cleanliness of the assets. There are efforts underway to explore utilizing mid-route cleaners and cleaning the vehicles more frequently. Limited stop bus service, we're going to explore that as part of the Rose Lane project with the City of Portland, and potentially even with some of the HB 2017 service increases. Adding more off-peak bus service, again, that's just going to be part of our annual service plan that you're going to be seeing in the fall. And expanding the TOD and real estate programs. Currently there's a TGM, Transportation Growth Management grant that we've applied for to study ways to utilize doing TODs around our transit centers.
So to wrap up, this was definitely a quick presentation here, but many of the efforts that we've just highlighted are things that we TriMet can kind of go ahead and do soon. There also are a lot of things that we really need, of course, our valued regional partners all over the region to help us deliver. So of course, just want to highlight here that growing transit ridership across our whole region really relies on all of these valued partnerships we have with cities, counties, and the state and other community organizations. We will continue to really refine and expand our mobility offerings, further reflecting the updated vision, mission, values, and could include something like exploring a loyalty program, more creative transportation demand programs, and then of course further expanding technology integration to really focus in on customer experience as we go into the future. So with that, happy to take any questions. These are the ranked priorities that came out of our effort. This doesn't just stop here, but we did want to highlight, of course, that there are things in the near-term horizon we can go ahead and act on in the near future.
Dr. Wade, did you have a question?
Yes, just a question. So under next steps, at the top where you mentioned improving the cleanliness of assets, exploring utilizing mid-route cleaners, what is so I guess my question is, who's the workforce behind who does it currently, and then are we seeing, does this translate to additional staffing in our custodial operations? How would that translate to adding staff capacity or not, or?
And so that belongs in our maintenance department, and I think that the challenge is going to be, what can we do with the people that we have currently? And I think that's part of the exploration of what we can do and how much we can do it and which lines we do it on to start with.
So if I can just add into this one, I think it's a combination of effectiveness, and there may be need for more staff. Right now they're done through our service workers and cleaners out there, but I also think there's potentially other ways to look at it. I'm gonna wear my old life hat. Is when I worked at Starbucks. We used to took vacuum cleaners and literally put them on the straps of our back, so you start to increase the mobility of what they do. So we said, okay, what do you need to be successful out there? So we increase the productivity, the effectiveness, and also there's a visibility side to this, where people see a high presence going, wow, look at these people go. And so I think we're looking at models even like, can you have it either in terminus with high visibility, or even a rotating group down at Pioneer Square. So probably every couple minutes there's a train coming through, but it may not be the deep clean where you're scrubbing. So I think we want to look at the deep clean side of it, where we're really scrubbing this stuff back at the ranch or back at the bus and train facilities. There is a present side to effectiveness, and which gives, I think, people confidence. And the challenge we have in this type of industry and service, and I've seen it many times myself over the years, where literally a cleaner just got on a train out at the end of a line somewhere, and the next person got on as the train left and spilled a Coke. So it just got clean, but now it's, the whole rest of the trip, it's now a Coke spilled. And so despite what we can do, you're only as good as what's going on the minute they leave. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to up our intervention speed of people and productivity effectiveness, and I think we also have to place where we place them as well. So I think there's a combination of things we're going to have to look at, and yes, part of it may be increased staff.
And is that something that we're using on outside contracting services for, or is
we
it
have
something...
staff inside right now who do that work.
So we have TriMet employees who
I guess, what is their title under the maintenance?
Service worker, I guess, cleaner and service worker. Yeah, they do a utility job depending on, there's a pool of them, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's some that are called at the facilities and some that are, I think we have an opportunity actually in service where our customers get to see them doing their work as well. I think that's part we're missing.
Great. I just thank you, Doug, for that point. I think a lot of that particular line of maintenance work is hidden. You know, I think it's hidden from the public. And I think for me, you know, I want those workers to feel pride in what they do. You know, they're working for our organization. I want them to feel like they're, you know, they're proud of the work that they're doing for us. So I think this could be just another, you know, to kind of piggyback off on this, could be also just a part of our, how are we doing the workforce development around particular parts of our agencies that could also play into the increase of ridership. So trying to make those connections.
Well, we also use our service workers also as a feeding pool for becoming mechanics, for other things down the road. So it's not as though you come in as a service worker and that's where you stay. We want to keep promoting the best and the brightest and those who show passion and effort and excellence to keep advancing them. So these can be pathways when otherwise they may struggle at a certain level. They actually can improve their quality of their life and taking on growing into other fields. So to me, you come in as a cleaner, you may not need to stay there. So this is about pathways to the future a bit for us. But while you're there, you better hit your mark and you better be really good. And I look at it personally very much like the Southwest Airlines. You come in, you're getting off the plane, and those people are moving fast and they're really good. And I kind of get off the plane going, hey, gee, they found the newspaper I forgot, right? And they move through it quick, and they're high visibility, and they feel engaged. So we need to do that too.
Thank you. Right on the heels of that comment around workforce development, I'm tickled pink at this notion that there's an interest in potentially bringing more folks to be more visible in the cleaning, and that those might represent opportunities to entice more people to go through that trajectory of coming in as service workers, realizing how amazing the transit industry career opportunities are, and then becoming those operators and, you know, having Doug's job one day. That is all fantastic.
I wish they'd hurry up.
So I was just curious, how high is that first rung? Are the service worker positions governed through labor unions? Is that an internal staff hire always? How open is the palette of possibilities to bring people in to the transit industry through this service worker mechanism?
Roland, why don't you come up here? I think Roland this would be a great opportunity for Roland to comment.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but
welcome. Either way.
So, no way, just put me right on the spot. So currently our service worker program is quite extensive, and it also leads into other programs for development within the organization. And we're looking at trying to figure out how we better utilize those workers and create more opportunities for people that are coming into the system. So some of the things that we've done recently are, like the CDL requirement was 21 years of age. We're pushing that back to 19 years of age. So that allows for more opportunity for youth to come in that sometimes are forgotten in the community. So that allows for a different method. We're looking at lots of different strategies, working with Laird and others in labor. So there's not much I'm gonna really comment on all of that part right now, but I can tell you that the jobs are well paid. So I think that when you say they're unrecognized, I think our service workers are tremendous workers. They do a great job. One of the things that we're looking at is just really getting them more focused, and I'm putting a huge impact on the cleanliness. So for example, I got 3 months of data where we've detailed our fleet. On the LRV side, we've gone through within 60 days. I wanted every one of them detailed, and we've managed to do that for the past 3 months. So that's a big improvement. Hopefully, and then on the bus side, we'll do the same. So we're really just getting really focused, increasing the training, bringing in people that's what they really want to do as well. I mean, so I heard, is there ways to come into TriMet and grow your career? I think there are a lot of ways that we can do that through the service workers programs that we currently have, and I'm trying to figure out how to give them more access and more focus. So a lot of good things that are happening. As far as the inline cleaning, right now we've got to work through some of our internal processes, but it requires some changes in the job. It also requires more coordination between departments, which we've started. And so, like even getting the alignment cleaned and different things, there's more training. And in addition, we're looking at job hazardous analysis. So what can we do when that train's moving and keep it safe for our employees? And so there's a lot going on right now. But I guarantee the trains and the buses are going to be cleaner as long as I'm around.
That's great.
We have to do a better job.
So, Rowan, with that, thank you for staying for the next 50 years.
That was good.
We talk about cleanliness, but to me, when I look at a resource, regardless of the department you're in, any one of us, we are part of the show. Whether it be my primary task may be cleaning. The general manager should be picking up newspapers when I see them. We never walk past an unacceptable situation, or if you can't solve it, call somebody who can help.
Yes.
And so for me, there's a cultural piece to handing out your business cards, to humanizing the experience of having as many advocates on the system, although you might be a ride guide, or you might be a cleaner, or you might be somebody in maintenance of way. Everyone is able to help a customer. Even if you're walking by, you may be fixing a elevator, but you can still help in the customer experience, and yes, that cleaners are part of that show too. So I think everybody has a role to their primary role, but there's a support advocacy role to take care of our customers that should transcend every single job position. So there's a cultural piece to this evolution as we move to continue to take the journey of a customer-centric experience. And then it helps decrease, this gets to the safety security piece as well, that everybody, safety, security, all of it should come together, and not just tied to the one item which does need to be improved, but it all should be multitasking.
Thank you.
I might just also comment, if I may, just in a couple of slides. One of them is on number 7, which talked about off-peak bus service. I think there's also an opportunity here for us to look at not other ways where, if we have an hour service, are there other cost-effective ways to go to 15-minute service, 20-minute service? Not everything is a 40-foot bus. So what are those other delivery models that we may have to contemplate with partnerships and other ways to do things we haven't really looked at before? And so I think so not everything is a bus. So I think we have to be willing to look at what that looks like, particularly we got off-peak periods, or even late at night things where we may be able to engage new customer segments that we haven't because the bus just wasn't there. So there's a yield management effectiveness side to the net of all these handoffs that go on. So I think there's some gap opportunities here.
So you talked about that. Slide 16, you talk about triple-digit ridership increases.
So it's at least 100.
100%
or more. 100
doubling of
people.
the doubling.
100 people. More.
100 people.
Boardings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not
All right.
percentages.
Good.
Not percentage.
I say, my goodness.
Why not
Be
4?
really
Why not 4 digits?
Thank you. Go ahead.
On the customer service, how about Wi-Fi on the buses and trains? What's up with that?
Go ahead.
Yes, that is part of the package of improvements that we are just starting to understand more about and learn the costs of. So that's been looked at in this study just a little bit, but we would need to do more on that as well.
Thank you.
What we're doing on this, in fact, we had a meeting exactly on that topic this week, saying from a customer experience perspective, there's a whole list of things we can all come up with. Wi-Fi is one of them that brings value that our customers get to vote with. And we're going to put a program together in ranked order and timeline around which ones are we going to go after, because we've only got so many resources and dollars. Which ones do we want to go after and deliver in what order around, I'll call the softer side of the experience, beyond just rubber tires and steel wheels. So to overlay the palette of people go, you're actually making my experience better. And so that is going to be on the list of things to look at.
I'll just mention this. My daughter was a student at Portland Community College, and they have shuttles between the campuses. And she told me they had Wi-Fi on that bus. So there's a local entity that has experience with it. She said she would have trouble logging on, and I thought, gosh, you're going to end up having your bus operator being kind of the tech guy too, right?
We are hiring.
That's a risk.
Thank you. Two brief comments and a question. First of all, thank you, Doug, for mentioning the possibility of looking at what is a good vehicle solution for different kinds of service expansion models. I really appreciate the agility that not everything is going to be a bus, and I think it's really exciting to see what it could look like to start expanding service and utilize a broader menu of tools in the toolbox. Also, I want to underscore the value of the workforce development side of the model when we're talking about service workers and having that be a potential pipeline for people to enter the industry. I really appreciate the lowering the age for CDL down to 19 years. That's one of the ways you bring that rung on that first ladder a little bit lower. And I encourage, don't need to know the answer to the minimum qualifications right now for service workers, but I would encourage looking at what the minimum qualifications are and see where there are opportunities to ensure that we're providing a viable and accessible pathway for people to enter the industry. And I think looking at whether it's educational requirements, language requirements, age requirements, any sort of degree qualifications, all are opportunities to make sure we're opening up the possibility. So I just encourage that lens as we look at the service worker being applied as an expansion to our staffing.
Can I respond to that? So on the age requirement, I'm in the process of that, so I don't want to say that I've promised that, because I can't do that yet. Mm-hmm. But I really am pushing that, and I haven't seen any barriers yet. So I don't want to say, hey, we're already there, because there are a lot of steps to move those forwards, but we're very close. And that's all I want to comment. So,
yeah.
But I am doing everything I can with others in the organization to remove as many barriers as we can, to open up opportunity, and to also, when I say just get more focused, it really is. It's how do we help someone grow if they want to move forward in the organization, and we need to be more precise.
Music to my ears. Thank you so much. And the question is, in regards to in the ridership plan, there's some specific ideas around expanding lines, off-peak hours, on-peak hour, expanding capacity of vehicles. I'm wondering whether the HB 2017 guidelines for service expansion are the principal driving factor or the only factor for the ridership plan service expansions, or if there's other elements that are informing which lines to expand or in what way to be expanding service.
So with the HB 2017 and our other annual service plans that we've done prior to HB 2017, our service enhancement plans that I think you've all heard about have they're what our kind of our roadmap are for our service plan, our annual service plans that we come up with yearly.
And just to follow up, I know that those service enhancement plans precede the HB 2017 conversation. Mm-hmm. So is it fair then to say that the annual service plans and the HB 2017 guidelines are now both pushing the ridership plan specific expansions?
I think they all work together. We wanted to just say that some of the things that we've been, that the consultant helped us with, to say these are initiatives that help with ridership. We just wanted to show that these are something that we are doing, and that the service enhancement plans and the HB 2017 service all kind of go together to help increase ridership.
So maybe can I just add, so I think they're all interdependent. They each have their own genesis of what brought them forward. There's an immense amount of agreements, like HB 2017, of what the list is, what order, the timing of each. But there's also a list of things that inform us from our customer focus groups that we do, unrelated to any of these. Feedback that we get on an ongoing basis, ideas from our own team internally or from outside consultants around things so we kind of have this sort of wheel of spokes that inform us to a whole combination of what you see in front of you. Some are unrelated to any of it. We're actually going to be looking to test here potentially next year. It may work, it may not, but actually a headset tour, multilingual headset tour on likely going to be the Orange Line. So it actually helps us with new immigrants who arrive. What do they typically do? They go use transit around the world. Help with educational piece. My parents were educators, where we actually use it and actually put classrooms around and get on the train and go get educated with it. And actually hit a spectrum of ridership and even potentially test the elasticity of transit pricing as you get to experience beyond the $1.50, the $2.50 or $3.50, whatever the dollar number is. You start testing elasticity of social pricing, which is important. But if you get to experience base, that you may say, hey, by the way, for tourism. So that's an example. It's not in any of those buckets, but we're going to go explore. There's the things that our team have worked on around Apple Pay and all these other technology pieces. So some are infrastructure related, some are cleaner related. So it's any and all is in play that will help drive this game of why people may want to get out of their car who have a choice. So it's pretty well any and all is in play, and it'll have to earn its right to be a performer at the end of the day too.
Muy bien. Very exciting.
Okay, I think we're going to call that a wrap.
Thank you very much.
I hope this is helpful. So thank you to all of our team and to many others who are not here today. And I also want to thank Bernie Bottomley because he's been really helped championing a lot of this behind the scenes. This is complex. We will have to, this is based on affordability and speed. Some are policy related. And a part that didn't really get hit on here as well is also engaging our municipal partners in different ways before. So for example, kind of put a flag down, we will become a 100% physical transportation system, probably the first in the United States. And so we are going to be creating expectations as we fund some of our partners. If we're putting a bus stop down, please don't ask us to put it in a grassy field. What's the plan for the sidewalk, municipality? What's the plan for lighting? What's the plan that allows people to physically, on an equity lens, use our system? So we are going to be looking at policies that engage consistency across the region and be not just enhanced transit corridors, but also transit signal priority. We are in discussions right now using ODOT sides of lanes as C-Tran is used, but even if we don't have pavement that's thick enough on the sides, can we put a van type of thing in place to start accelerating up our express line? So that wasn't specifically called out here. So we're going to test and probe our partners even at ODOT and these other ones to say, not just what we get from our system, but also what can you as a governmental partner contribute to the system as well. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that will be part of this. So thanks for your support. Next, I'm going to call up Ryan Schaub. If he's going to give us a quick
General Manager, I think we've got some people who are, I hate to say this, that are needing to leave here.
Oh, okay.
I'm just thinking.
Do you want to push this off then?
I'm thinking if that's okay, is that okay with? Okay, I'm thinking we need to
you want to
call it a
wrap? Okay.
Sorry to say. Thank you for your understanding. I suppose you waited all this time just for this, right?
Okay.
All right.
We'll move this off to the next session then. So there's some exciting things going on in HOP, but we want to keep bringing you along as well. So
yes,
we'll call it a day, and thank you for raising the time frame.
Oh, wow.
So. Okay.
And was that cheering over there? Were you cheering?
Yeah.